We are back, and this is the finale of this series. This will be the last indictment and the last video of the indictments that I talk about. Blah 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 blah. If you hear an accent, sorry, but this is about the state of Georgia v. Donald John Trump and co-conspirators, aka the Georgia RICO Indictment. As with every sources, background, charges, post-indictment releasing conclusion, and final statements, I am pushing through all this because it's 7:46 p.m. and I have to get this out in the early AMs at maximum. So my sources, as with all these, is the Georgia indictment itself and the corresponding Wikipedia page, which I use for the background and post-indictment releasing. For the background, before and during the 2020 election, Donald Trump claimed there would be widespread voter fraud, and this was echoed by one of his lawyers, Rudy Giuliani, who along with Trump and others prepared arguments in case of a loss. Trump had also enlisted conservative activist and lawyer Cleta Mitchell to help overturn the 2020 election. At 2 a.m. in the East Room, Trump declared victory and the further vote counts were fraudulent. Trump's campaign data expert Matt Oczkowski told Trump he was going to lose, and White House counsel Pat Cipollone told Trump invalidating the results would be a murder-suicide pact, and under Barr's DOJ, there was no widespread fraud found in the election. On December 3, 2020, a 7-hour hearing of the Georgia Senate Committee on the Judiciary heard Trump's legal team, including Giuliani and Eastman, who made false claims of fraud, misconduct in the state's election, and that the Georgia legislature could appoint electors for Trump. On December 7th, Trump called Georgia House Speaker Ralston, asking him to convene a special session of the state legislature to overturn Georgia's results. In late December and early January of 2021, Jeffrey Clark, the AAG of the ENDA division, and acting for the DOJ Civil Division, drafted a letter to Georgia officials saying the DOJ had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states, and asked the legislators to convene over issues the appointment of presidential electors. This, however, was never sent, as acting DA Rosen and his deputy Donahue rejected the letter. Trump also pressured Georgia's Secretary of State Raffensperger to change the state's election results during an online conference on January 2, 2021, where Trump told him, "What I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than the 11,779 vote margin of defeat we have, because we won the state." On September 17th, Trump also wrote to Raffensperger alleging 43,000 ballots in DeKalb County had been mishandled, and Raffensperger should start the process of declassifying the election, or whatever the correct legal remedy is, and announce the true winner. The false elector scheme was a plan concocted by Giuliani and Eastman for Trump to recruit slates of false electors and to pressure public officials to accept them, with Trump being aware of the plan. This led to false documents being produced in the states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The 16 electors for Trump in Georgia were already picked before the election, as was precedent, but days after Biden won and before the electors were slated to cast their votes, they got a call asking them to come to the state capitol to cast alternate ballots. 4 the Republican electors declined to participate and were promptly replaced. As the real electors convened in the state Senate chamber, the false electors met in the meeting room within the state capitol. The fake electors' identities were verified by State Senator Hans Still, as they entered, but the meeting was public, with video posted the same day. Unlike other states, Georgia's fake elector scheme wasn't given directions to only be used if the Trump campaign prevailed in litigation. Trump v. Raffensperger was ongoing. The falsified documents were then sent to the U.S. Senate and National Archive by Giuliani and Chispo's team. In the weeks post-election, Trump and his team attacked the company of Dominion, claimed the machines used for digital voting were switching ballots by a process called adjudication, and that human operators could switch Trump votes to Biden ones. On January 7th, someone that posed as a fake elector and had communicated with Coffee County election supervisors about election office access escorted 2 Trump operatives into the office. This was caught on video. With alleged assistance from employees of the data forensics from Sullivan Strickler, they copied data from the election equipment with an Atlanta Trump-supported hall. Recording on call, the team scanned every freaking ballot, including equipment, and they imaged all the hard drives used on election day. January 19th text between Sidney Powell's associate Jim Penrose, a former National Security Agency official, and Doug Logan, who's from Cyber Ninjas, later ran the 2021 Maricopa County presidential ballot audit, showed intent to use the gathered data to decertify the Georgia presidential results and runoff. When the firm Sullivan Strickler was subpoenaed by the special grand jury convened in his case in 2022, they insisted they were politically agnostic and simply accepted paid work as a third-party contractor for the Trump campaign. During the investigation, the 2 Trump operatives admitted Sidney Powell sent them, and they'd accessed a voting machine inside the building with Kathy Latham, one of the fake electors, invoking the 5th. Of the 18 co-conspirators indicted in the case, Powell, Hampton, Latham, and Hall were all charged in the Coffee County breach. After the election, Trump and Giuliani repeatedly used a video that was taken out of context and used the footage to make false claims that Ruby Freeman and her daughter, Wendrea Shea Moss, had committed election fraud, with Giuliani accusing them of passing around USB ports as if they were vials of heroin or cocaine, and engaging in surreptitious legal activity, citing video footage that, according to Moss, actually showed the woman with a ginger mint. The women and their family members were subjected to anti-black racist smears and death threats, and were warned by the FBI that they would not be safe in their home. Freeman and Moss sued Giuliani for defamation in the U.S. District Court for D.C. in December 2021. Giuliani was ordered to pay $89,000 in attorney's fees to them in July 2023 after being sanctioned for failing to turn over evidence in the case. Giuliani admitted his statements had been defamatory per se, and denied they had caused any damages. On July 25th, the judge entered a default judgment on August 30th against Giuliani due to his failure to produce subpoenaed documents. Moss testified in June 2022 public hearing before the U.S. House Select Committee on the January 6th attack that after Giuliani's remarks, she and her family were subjected to a barrage of racist threats that she didn't feel safe. And we know the end of that Giuliani case. He admitted to lying, but said it was his First Amendment right to do so. Now, the counts. How many are there? Oh, that's right. Okay, there's quite a bit of counts with this one, so this will take a while, but I might have time. Count 1 for Trump. One count in violation of the Georgia RICO Racketeer Influence and Corruption Organizations Act, OCGA, Section 16-14-4C. C. It shall be unlawful for any person to conspire or endeavor to violate any of the provisions of subsection A or B of this code section. A person violates this subsection when 1. He or she, together with one or more persons, conspires to violate any of the provisions of subsection A or B of this code section, and any one or more of such persons commits any overt act to affect the object of the conspiracy, or 2. He or she endeavors to violate any of the provisions of subsection A or B of this code section and commits any overt act to affect the object of this endeavor. A being, it shall be unlawful for any person through a pattern of racketeering activity or proceeds derived therefrom to acquire or maintain directly or indirectly any interest in or control of any enterprise, real property, or personal property of any nature, including money. And B being, it shall be unlawful for any person employed by or associated with any enterprise to conduct or participate in, directly or indirectly, such enterprise through a pattern of racketeering activity. Count 1. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, with one of the states he lost being Georgia. Trump and the other defendants charged in the indictment refused to accept the results, and they knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in Trump's favor. This plan contained a common plan and purpose to commit 2 or more acts of racketeering activity in Fulton County, Georgia, elsewhere in Georgia, and other states. The enterprise. The defendants and others not named unlawfully conspired and endeavored to conduct and participate in a criminal enterprise in Fulton County and elsewhere. Along with this, the defendants constitute a criminal organization whose members and associates commit the crimes of, but not limited to, false statements and writings, impersonating a public officer, forgery, filing false documents, influencing witnesses, computer theft, computer trespass, computer invasion of privacy, conspiracy to defraud the states, act involving theft and perjury. These defendants are Donald Trump, Giuliani, John Eastman, Mark Meadows, Kenneth Chesbro, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Ellis, Ray Smith III, Robert Shealy, Michael Roman, David Schaefer, Sean Joe, Stephen Lee, Harrison Floyd, Trevian Cuddy, Sidney Powell, Catherine Latham, Scott Hall, Missy Hampton, unindicted co-conspirators, individuals 1 through 30, and others known and unknown to the grand jury. This criminal organization constituted a criminal enterprise as it's defined in OCGA 16-14-3, that is, group of individuals associated in fact. The defendants and members of the association have relationships with each other and the enterprise. The enterprise could be seen as an ongoing organization whose members and associates functions as a continuing unit for common purpose of achieving the objectives of the enterprise. The enterprise operated in Fulton County, Georgia, elsewhere in the state of Georgia, and in multiple other states. The enterprise operated for a period of time sufficient to permit its members and associates to pursue its objectives. Manner and methods of the enterprise. False statements to and solicitation of state legislators, false statements to and solicitation of high-ranking state officials, creation and distribution of false electoral college documents, and harassment and intimidation of Fulton County election worker Ruby Freeman, solicitation of high-ranking U.S. DOJ officials, solicitation of the VP of the U.S., unlawful breach of election equipment in Georgia and elsewhere, and obstructive acts in furtherance of the conspiracy and the cover-up. The acts made to further the conspiracy. Act 1. On or about October 31st, 2020, Trump discussed a draft speech with Individual 1 and unindicted co-conspirator known to the grand jury that falsely declared victory. There's what, like 100 of these? This is all count 1, I believe. Yeah. Okay. Let's go through it. On about October 31st, 2020, Trump discussed a draft speech with Individual 1 and unindicted co-conspirator known to the grand jury that falsely declared victory and falsely claimed fraud. On or about the 4th day of November 2020, Trump made a nationally televised speech falsely declaring victory in the 2020 presidential election. This speech was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. This phrase will be at the end of every one, so I will not be saying it. On or about the 15th day of November 2020, Giuliani placed a telephone call to Individual 2, an unindicted co-conspirator known to the grand jury, and left an around 83-second long voicemail message for unindicted co-conspirator Individual 2, making statements concerning fraud in the 2020 election in Fulton County, Georgia. On about the 19th day of November 2020, Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, Sonny Powell, and Individual 3, an unindicted co-conspirator whose identity is known to the grand jury, appeared at a press conference at the Republican National Committee headquarters on behalf of Trump and Donald J. Trump for President, Inc., the Trump campaign. They made false statements concerning fraud in the 2020 presidential election in Georgia and elsewhere. On about the 20th day of November 2020, David Schaefer sent an email to others in Individual 4, an unindicted co-conspirator whose identity is known to the grand jury. In the email, David Schaefer states that Scott Hall, Georgia bail bondsman, has been looking into the election on behalf of the president at the request of David Bossie, and asked Individual 4, an unindicted co-conspirator, to exchange contact information with Scott Hall and to help him as needed. On about the 20th day of November 2020, Donald Trump and Mark Meadows in person and Giuliani via phone met with Majority Leader of the Michigan Senate, Michael Shirkey. Speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives, Lee Chatfield, and other Michigan legislators in the Oval Office at the White House. Within that meeting, Trump made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Michigan. On about the 21st day of November 2020, Mark Meadows sent text messages to United States Representative Scott Perry from Pennsylvania and stated, "Can you send me the number for the Speaker and the leader of Pennsylvania legislature? Post wants to chat with them." On about the 22nd day of November 2020, Trump and Giuliani placed a telephone call to Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives Rusty Bowers. During the phone call, Giuliani made false statements concerning fraud in the November presidential election in Arizona and solicited, requested, and importuned Bowers to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona. Bowers declined and later testified to the United States House of Representatives Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol that he told Trump, "I would not break my oath." On about the 25th day of November 2020, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis appeared, spoke, and presented witnesses at a meeting of Pennsylvania legislators in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. During the meeting, Giuliani made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Pennsylvania and solicited, requested, and importuned the Pennsylvania legislators present at the meeting to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. During the meeting, Jenna Ellis solicited, requested, and importuned the Pennsylvania legislators present at the meeting to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. Donald Trump joined the meeting by telephone, made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Pennsylvania, and solicited, requested, and importuned the Pennsylvania legislators present at the meeting to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. Act 9. On or about the 25th day of November 2020, immediately after the meeting of Pennsylvania legislators in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, later that day, Donald Trump, Mark Meadows, Giuliani, and Jenna Ellis and unindicted co-conspirators, Individual and Individual 6, whose identities are unknown to the grand jury, met with a group of Pennsylvania legislators at the White House and discussed holding a special session of the Pennsylvania General Assembly. On or about the 26th day of November 2020, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis placed a telephone call to the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Brian Cutler, and left Cutler a voicemail message for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning him to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. On or about the 26th day of November 2020, Giuliani placed a telephone call to President pro tempore of the Pennsylvania Senate, Jake Corman, for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning Corman to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. On about the 27th day of November 2020, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis placed a telephone call to Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives by Cutler and left Cutler a voicemail message for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning him to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. On or about the 27th day of November 2020, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis placed telephone call to President pro tempore of the Pennsylvania Senate, Jake Corman, for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning Corman to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. On about the 27th day of November 2020, Trump placed a telephone call to President pro tempore of the Pennsylvania Senate, Jake Corman, for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning Corman to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. On about the 28th day of November 2020, Giuliani placed a telephone call to the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Brian Cutler, and left Cutler a voicemail message for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning him to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. On about the 29th day of November 2020, Giuliani placed a telephone call to the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Brian Cutler, and left Cutler a voicemail message for the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning him to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Pennsylvania. On about the 30th day of November 2020, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis appeared, spoke, and presented witnesses at a meeting of Arizona legislators in Phoenix, Arizona. Unindicted co-conspirators Individual and Individual 6, whose identities are known to the grand jury, were also present. During the meeting, Giuliani made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Arizona, and solicited, requested, and importuned the Arizona legislators present at the meeting to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona. During the meeting, Jenna Ellis solicited, requested, and importuned the Arizona legislators present at the meeting to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona. Trump joined the meeting by telephone and made false statements concerning fraud in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Arizona. On about the 30th day of November 2020, Michael Roman instructed unindicted co-conspirator Individual 7, whose identity is known to the grand jury, to coordinate with individuals associated with the Trump campaign to contact state legislators in Georgia and elsewhere on behalf of Trump and to encourage them to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from their respective states. On between the 1st day of December 2020 and the 31st day of December 2020, Trump and Mark Meadows met with John McEntee and requested that McEntee prepare a memorandum outlining strategy for disrupting and delaying the joint session of Congress on January 6. The day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly electedly qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states. The strategy included having Mike Pence count only half the electoral votes from some states and then returning the remaining electoral votes to state legislators. What's that though? On about the first day of December 2020, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis met with Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives, Rusty Bowers, President of the Arizona Senate, Karen Fann, and other Arizona legislators in Phoenix, Arizona. Unindicted co-conspirator Individual 5, whose identity is known to the grand jury, was also present. During the meeting, Giuliani made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Arizona and solicited, requested, and importuned the legislators present to call special sessions of the Arizona State Legislature. On about the second day of December 2020, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis appeared, spoke, and presented witnesses at meeting of the Michigan House of Representatives Oversight Committee. During the meeting, Giuliani made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Michigan and solicited, requested, and importuned the Michigan legislators present at the meeting to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Michigan. During the meeting, Jenna Ellis solicited, requested, and importuned the Michigan legislators present at the meeting to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Michigan. On about the third day of December 2020, Trump caused to be tweeted from the Twitter account at Donald Trump. Georgia hearings now on at OANN. Amazing. On or about the third day of December 2020, Giuliani, Eastman, Jenna Ellis, and Ray Smith III committed the felony offense of solicitation of violation of oath by public officer in Fulton County, Georgia, by unlawfully soliciting, requesting, and importuning certain public officers then serving as elected members of the Georgia Senate and present at Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting, including unindicted co-conspirator Individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, Senators Lee Anderson, Brandon Beach, Matt Brass, Greg Lorenzo, Steve Gooch, Tyler Harper, Bill Heath, Jen Jordan, John F. Kennedy, William Ligon, Elena Parent, Michael Rett, Gordon Summers, and Blake Tillery to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath by public officer by unlawfully appointing presidential electors from Georgia in willful and intentional violation of the terms of the oath of said persons as prescribed by law with intent that said persons engage in said conduct. On about the third day of December 2020, Giuliani committed the felony offense of false statements and writings in Fulton County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following knowingly false statements. In representations to members of the Georgia Senate President and Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing, that at least 96,000 mail ballots were counted in the presidential election in Georgia, despite there being no record of those ballots having been returned to county elections office. That Dominion voting systems equipment used in the presidential election in Antrim County, Michigan, mistakenly recorded 6,000 votes for Biden, where the votes were actually cast for Trump. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state government and county and state law enforcement agencies. This was an act of racketeering activity under blah 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 blah. On about the third day of December 2020, Ray Smith III committed the felony offense of false statements and writings of Florida County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate present at Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. That 2,506 felons voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia. That 66,248 underage people illegally registered to vote before their 17th birthday prior to the presidential election in Georgia. That at least 2,423 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who were not listed as registered to vote. That 1,043 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who had legally registered to vote using post office box. That 10,315 or more dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia. That Fulton County election workers at State Farm Arena ordered poll watchers and members of the media to leave the tabulation area on the night of November 3rd, 2020, and continue to operate after ordering everyone to leave. Said statements being within the jurisdictions of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State, blah 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 blah. Act 20. On about the third day of December 2020, Trump caused to be tweeted from his account, "Wow, blockbuster testimony taking place right now in Georgia. Bad stuff by Dems when Republicans were forced to leave the large counting room. Plenty more coming, but this alone leads to an easy win of the state." On about the third day of December 2020, Trump tweeted, "People in Georgia got caught cold bringing in massive numbers of ballots and putting them in voting machines. Great job at Brian Kemp." On about the third day of December, Trump met with Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Brian Cutler, in the Oval Office at the White House and discussed holding a special session of the Pennsylvania General Assembly. On about between the third day of December 2020 and the 26th day of December 2020, Giuliani placed a telephone call to President pro tempore of the Georgia Senate, Cecil Terrell, Butch Miller, for the purpose of making false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Georgia. On about between the third day of December 2020 and the 26th, Trump placed a telephone call to President pro tempore of the Georgia Senate, Butch Miller. On about the fifth day of December 2020, Trump placed a telephone call to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and solicited, requested, and importuned Kemp to call a special session of the Georgia Senate General Assembly. On about the sixth day of December 2020, Trump caused to be tweeted from his account, "Gee, what surprise, has anyone informed the so-called, says he has no power to do anything, Governor Brian Kemp, his puppet, Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, that they could easily solve this mess when signature verification call session. So easy." On about the sixth day of December 2020, Sidney Powell entered into a written engagement agreement with Sullivan Strickler LLC, forensic data firm located in Fulton County, Georgia, for the performance of computer forensic collections and analytics on demand of voting systems equipment in Michigan and elsewhere. The unlawful breach of election equipment in Coffee County, Georgia, was subsequently performed under this agreement. On about the sixth day of December 2020, Robert Trudy sent an email to Eastman, unindicted co-conspirator individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and Georgia Senator Brandon Beach, that said, "I'm working on setting up a call for you with the Speaker and the President pro tempore tomorrow. I'm also making the leadership aware of the importance for Trump electors to meet on December 14th. Please provide for the citation to the requirements of the duties which they most comply with." On about the sixth day of December 2020, Eastman sent an email to Robert Trudy, unindicted co-conspirator individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and Georgia Senator Brandon Beach, that stated that the Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia need to meet on December 14, 2020, sent 6 sets of certificates of vote, and mailed them to the President of the Senate and to other officials. On about the sixth day of December 2020, Robert Trudy sent an email to unindicted co-conspirator individual 2, whose identity is known to the grand jury, that stated he had been speaking with Eastman and was attempting to set up a call with Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives, David Ralston, and President pro tempore of the Georgia Senate, Butch Miller, to encourage them to call a special session of the Georgia General Assembly. In the email, Robert Trudy stated, Professor Eastman told me tonight that it is critical that the 16 electors for Trump meet next Monday and vote in accordance with USC 7. In the email, Robert Trudy further stated, "I assume you can make this happen." On about the 7th day of December 2020, unindicted co-conspirator individual 2, whose identity is known to the grand jury, sent an email to Robert Trudy and David Schaefer that said, "Bob, can you get on a call with David Schaefer, State GOP Chair, and I later this morning to discuss? David has been on top of a lot of efforts in the state. Get off a board call around 10:30. On about the 7th day of December 2020, Giuliani caused to be tweeted from his account, retweet of unindicted co-conspirator individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, that said, "Georgia Patriot call to action. Today is the day we need you to call your state Senate House reps and ask them to sign the petition for a special session. We must have free and fair elections in Georgia, and this is the only path to ensuring every legal vote is counted." At Real Donald Trump. On about the 7th day, December 2020, Eastman sent an email to Giuliani with an attached memorandum titled "The Real Deadline for Setting States' Electoral Votes." The body of the email stated, "Here's the memo we discussed." The memorandum was written by Kenneth Chesbro to James R. Trupis and attorneys associated with the Trump campaign and advocates for the position that Trump's presidential elected nominees in Wisconsin should meet and cast electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite the fact that Trump lost the presidential election in Wisconsin. On about the 7th day of December 2020, Trump requested that Bill White, an individual associated with the Trump campaign then residing in Fulton County, Georgia, provide him with certain information, including contact information for Majority Leader of the Georgia Senate, Mike Duncan, and President pro tempore of the Georgia Senate, Butch Miller. The following day, White sent an email containing the requested information to Giuliani, unindicted co-conspirator individual 5, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and others. On about the 7th day of December 2020, Giuliani placed a phone call to Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives, David Ralston, and discussed holding a special session of the Georgia General Assembly. On about the 7th day of December 2020, Trump committed the felony offense of solicitation of violation of oath by public office in Fulton County, Georgia, by unlawfully soliciting, requesting, and importuning Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives, David Ralston, public officer, to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath by public officer, by calling a special session of the Georgia General Assembly for the purpose of unlawfully appointing presidential electors from Georgia in willful and intentional violation of the terms of the oath of said person as prescribed by law, with intent that said person engage in said conduct. On about the 8th day of December 2020, Trump placed a telephone call to Georgia Attorney General Chris Carr for the purpose of making false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Georgia and elsewhere. During the telephone call, Trump asked Carr not to discourage other state attorney generals from joining a federal lawsuit filed by the state of Texas contesting the administration of the presidential election in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. On about the 8th day of December 2020, Trump and Eastman placed a telephone call to RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel to request her assistance gathering certain individuals to meet and cast electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, in certain states despite the fact that Trump lost the presidential election in these states. On about the 8th day of December 2020, Michael Roman sent a text message to unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, said that he had spoken to Misty Hampton and asked unindicted co-conspirator individual to get Misty Hampton to attend the hearing before the Georgia House of Representatives Governmental Affairs Committee on December 10, 2020. On about the 9th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbro wrote a memorandum titled "Statutory Requirements for December 14th Electoral Votes" to James R. Trupis, an attorney associated with the Trump campaign. The memorandum provides detailed state-specific instructions for how Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin would meet and cast electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite the fact that Trump lost the presidential election in those states. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbro sent an email to Georgia Republican Party Chairman David Schaefer and unindicted co-conspirator individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury. Kenneth Chesbro stated in the email that certain individuals associated with the Trump campaign asked him to help coordinate with the other contested states to help with the logistics of the electors in other states, hopefully joining and casting their votes on Monday. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbro sent an email with attached documents to David Schaefer and unindicted co-conspirators individual 9, individual 10, and individual 11, whose identities are known to the grand jury. The documents were to be used by Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia for the purpose of the casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite the fact that Trump lost the presidential election in Georgia. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbro sent an email with the attached documents to Arizona Republican Party Executive Director Greg Safton and others. These documents were to be used by Trump presidential elected nominees in Arizona for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite the fact that Trump lost the presidential election in Arizona. This was an... Coming again. One moment. Much better. Actually, wait a moment. Actually, jeez. Just, talking for like hours upon hours on end, it just takes a lot on your throat. Pause. Act 50. What? God. Okay. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbo sent an email to Republican Party of Wisconsin Chairman Brian Schimming with a proposed language for documents to be used by Trump presidential electors nominees in Wisconsin for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite the fact that Trump lost the presidential election in Wisconsin. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbo sent an email to Nevada Republican Party Vice Chairman Jim DeGraffenreid. Kenneth Chesbo stated in the email that Giuliani and other individuals associated with the Trump campaign asked him to reach out to you and the other Nevada electors to run a point on the plan to have all Trump Pence electors in all 6 contested states meet and transmit their votes to Congress on Monday, December 14th. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbo sent an email with attached documents to Jim DeGraffenreid. The documents were to be used by Trump presidential elected nominees in Nevada for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite the fact Trump lost. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbo sent an email with attached documents to the Republican Party of Pennsylvania General Counsel Thomas W. King III. The documents were to be used by Trump presidential elected nominees in Pennsylvania for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite Trump losing. On or between the 10th day of December 2020 and the 14th of December, David Schaefer contacted unindicted co-conspirator Individual 2, whose identity is known to the grand jury, by telephone and discussed unindicted co-conspirator Individual 2's attendance at the December 14th, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. On or by the 10th day of December 2020, Giuliani and Ray Smith III committed the felony offense of solicitation or violation of oath by public officer in Fulton County, Georgia, by unlawfully soliciting, requesting, and importuning certain public officers then serving as elected members of the Georgia House of Representatives and present at House Governmental Affairs Committee's meetings, including Representatives Shab Blackman, John Burns, Barry Fleming, Todd Jones, B. Nugent, Mary Margaret Oliver, Alan Powell, Renita Shannon, Robert Tranmo, Scott Turner, and Bruce Williamson to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath by public officer by unlawfully appointing presidential electors from Georgia and willful and intentional violation of the terms of the oath of said person as prescribed by law with the intent that said person engaged in said conduct. On about the 10th day of December 2020, Giuliani committed the felony offense of false statements and writings to Fulton County, Georgia by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia House of Representatives present at House Governmental Affairs Committee meeting. That is quite clear from the State Farm Arena video from November 3, 2020 that Fulton County election workers were stealing votes and that Georgia officials were covering up a crime in plain sight. That at State Farm Arena on November 3, 2020, Democratic officials got rid of all the reporters and the observers, anyone that couldn't be trusted, used by the excuse of a water main break, cleared out the voting area, and then went about their dirty, crooked business. That between 12,000 and 24,000 ballots were illegally counted by Fulton County election workers at State Farm Arena on November 3, 2020. Then in Michigan, there were 700,000 more ballots counted than there were sent out to voters in the presidential election, which was accounted for by quadruple counting ballots. That Ruby Freeman, Shane Moss, and an unidentified man were quite obviously surreptitiously passing on USB ports as if they were vials of heroin or cocaine at State Farm Arena to be used to infiltrate the crooked Dominion voting machines. That 96,000 mail-in ballots were counted in the presidential election in Georgia, despite there being no record of those ballots having been returned to county elections office. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation departments and agencies of state government and county and state law enforcement agencies. This was an act of racketeering. On or about the 11th day of December 2020, David Schaefer reserved room 216 at the Georgia State Capitol in Fulton County, Georgia, for the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. On or about the 11th day of December 2020, Kenneth Chesbo sent an email to Jim DeGraffenreid and stated that the purpose of having the electoral votes sent into Congress is to provide the opportunity to debate the election irregularities in Congress and to keep alive the possibility that the votes could be flipped to Trump. On about the 11th day of December 2020, Kevin Cheslow sent an email with attached documents to Greg Safston and others. Documents were to be used by Trump presidential-elect nominees in Arizona for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite Trump losing. On about the 11th day of December 2020, Kevin Cheslow sent an email with attached documents to Michael Roman and other individuals associated with the Trump campaign. The documents were to be used by Trump presidential electors in Nevada for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite Trump losing. On about the 11th day of December 2020, Ken Cheslow sent an email with attached documents to Michael Roman, unindicted co-conspirator individual 5, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and others. Documents were to be used by Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite Trump losing. On about the 12th day of December 2020, David Schaefer contacted unindicted co-conspirator individual 12, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and discussed unindicted co-conspirator individual 12's attendance at the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. On about the 12th day of December 2020, Michael Roman sent an email to unindicted co-conspirator individual 4 and 7, whose identities are known to the grand jury, and other individuals associated with the Trump campaign. In the email, Michael Roman stated, "I need a track for the electors," and instructed individuals associated with the Trump campaign to populate entries on a shared spreadsheet listing Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The entries on the spreadsheet included contact information for the Trump presidential elected nominees, whether the Trump presidential elected nominees had been contacted, and whether the Trump presidential elected nominees had confirmed that they would attend the December 14, 2020 meetings of Trump presidential elected nominees in the respective states, despite the fact that Trump lost in those states. On about the 12th day of December 2020, Kenneth Cheslow met with Brian Schimming and discussed the December 14, 2020 meeting of the Trump presidential elected nominees in Wisconsin. Giuliani joined the meeting by telephone and said that the media should not be notified of the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Wisconsin. On about the 12th day of December 2020, Michael Roman instructed an individual associated with the Trump campaign to distribute certain information related to the December 14, 2020 meetings of Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin to unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and to other individuals associated with the Trump campaign. On about the 12th day of December 2020, unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, sent an email to Michael Roman and David Schaefer with updates on the progress of organizing the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. The email stated which elected nominees had confirmed they would attend the meeting. The other individuals had been secured in case some of the elected nominees refused to participate in the meeting. The Georgia legislators had been contacted to ensure access to the Georgia Capitol, and that David Schaefer had reserved room 216 for the meeting. On about the 12th day of December 2020, David Schaefer sent an email to unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, advising them to touch base with each of the Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia in advance of the December 14, 2020 meeting to confirm their attendance. On about the 12th day of December 2020, unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, sent a text message with contact information for unindicted co-conspirator individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and Georgia Senator Brandon Beach to Michael Roman for the purpose of providing the contact information to Giuliani. On about the 13th day of December 2020, Kenneth Cheslow sent an email with attached documents to Michael Roman. The documents were to be used by Trump presidential elected nominees in New Mexico for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite Trump losing. On about the 13th day of December 2020, Kenneth Cheslow sent an email to Giuliani with the subject "Privileged and Confidential, Brief Notes on President of the Senate Strategy." In the email, Kenneth Cheslow outlined multiple strategies for disrupting and delaying the joint session of Congress on J 6. The date was prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states. In the email, Kenneth Cheslow stated that the strategies outlined by him were preferable to allowing the Electoral Count Act to operate by its terms. On about the 13th day of December 2020, Kenneth Cheslow sent an email with attached documents to Michael Roman and an unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury. The documents were to be used by Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia for the purpose of casting electoral votes for Trump on December 14, 2020, despite Trump losing. On about the 13th day of December 2020, Kenneth Cheslow sent an email to Michael Roman and an unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and said that Giuliani wants to keep this quiet until after all the voting is done, in reference to the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. On about the 13th day of December 2020, David Schaefer sent a text message to unindicted co-conspirators individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and say that unindicted co-conspirator individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, would attend the December 14, 2020 meeting of the Trump presidential elected nominees in Florida County, Georgia, in the place of Trump presidential elected nominee who refused to participate in the meeting. On about the 13th day of December 2020, unindicted co-conspirator individual 9, whose identity is known to the grand jury, sent a text message to David Schaefer and confirmed that he and unindicted co-conspirator individual 13, whose identity is known to the grand jury, would attend the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Florida County, Georgia. On about the 14th day of December 2020, Trump caused to be tweeted from his account, "What fool Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia is. Could have been so easy, but now we have to deal with the hard way. Demand this clown called special session and open up signature verification now, otherwise could be bad day for two great senators on January 5th. On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer sent a text message to unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, that stated, "Listen, tell them to go straight to room 216 to avoid drawing attention for what we are doing," in reference to the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Florida County, Georgia. On about the 14th day of December 2020, Michael Roman sent an email to unindicted co-conspirators individual 4 and 7, whose identities are known to the grand jury, and stated, "Please send me an update as soon as the State Electoral College has adjourned and all paperwork is secured." On about the 14th day of December 2020, Ray Smith III and David Schaefer encouraged certain individuals present at the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Florida County, Georgia, to sign the document titled "Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia." On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer, Sean Still, Catherine Latham, and unindicted co-conspirators individual 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, whose identities are known to the grand jury, committed the felony offense of impersonating a public officer in Fulton County, Georgia, by unlawfully falsely holding themselves out as the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from the state of Georgia, public officers with intent to mislead the President of the United States Senate, the archivist of the President of the United States, the Georgia Secretary of State, and the Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, and to believe that they actually were such officers by placing in the United States mail to said person's document titled "Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia." This was an act of racketeering. On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer, Sean Still, Catherine Latham, and unindicted co-conspirators individuals 2, 8, 9, 10 through 19, whose identities are known to the grand jury, committed the felony offense of forgery in the first degree in Florida County, Georgia, by, with the intent to defraud, knowingly making document titled "Certificate of the Voters of the 2020 electors from Georgia," writing other than check in such manner that the writing as may purport to have been made by authority of the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from the state of Georgia. He did not give such authority and uttered and delivered said document to the archivist of the United States. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer, Sean Still, Kathleen Latham, and unindicted co-conspirators individuals 2, 8, 9 through 19, whose identities are known to the grand jury, committed the felony offense of false statements and writings of Florida County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making and using false document titled "Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia," with knowledge that said document contained the false statement, "We, the undersigned, being the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America for the state of Georgia, do hereby certify the following." Said document being within the jurisdiction of the Office of Georgia Secretary of State and the Office of the Governor of Georgia, departments and agencies of each state. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer, Sean Still, Catherine Latham, and unindicted co-conspirators individuals 2, 8, 9 through 19, whose identities are known to the grand jury, attempted to commit the felony offense of filing false documents in Florida County, Georgia, by placing in the United States mail document titled "Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia," addressing to Chief Judge, U.S. District Court, Northern District of Georgia, 2188 Richard D. Russell Federal Office Building and U.S. Courthouse, 75 Tad Turner Drive, Southwest Atlanta, Georgia, 30303, with intent to knowingly file, enter, and record said document in a court of the United States, having reason to know that said document contained the materially false statement, "We, the undersigned, be the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America for the state of Georgia, do hereby certify the following." This was an act of racketeering. On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer and Sean Still committed the felony offense of forgery in the first degree in Florida County, Georgia, by with the intent to defraud, knowingly making document titled "Notice of Filing of Electoral College Vacancy," writing other than check in such manner that the writing as may purports to have been made by the authority of the duly elected and qualified presidential electors for the state of Georgia. He did not give such authority and uttered and delivered said document to the archivist of the United States. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer and Sean Still committed the felony offense of false statements and writings in Florida County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making and using false document titled Re-Notice of Filing of Electoral College Vacancy, with knowledge that said document contained the false statement that David Schaefer was chairman of the 2020 Georgia Electoral College meeting and Sean Still was secretary of the 2020 Georgia Electoral College meeting. Said document being within the jurisdiction of the Office of Georgia Secretary of State and the Office of the Governor of Georgia, departments and agencies of state government. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 14th day of December 2020, David Schaefer instructed unindicted co-conspirator individual 15, whose identity is known to the grand jury, to deliver to the Office of the Governor of Georgia documents signed by David Schaefer and Sean Still titled Re-Notice of Filing of Electoral College Vacancy. The document contained multiple false statements. On about the 14th day of December 2020, unindicted co-conspirator individual 4, whose identity is known to the grand jury, sent an email to Michael Roman, unindicted co-conspirator individual 7, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and others that said, all votes cast, paperwork complete, being mailed now, ran pretty smoothly, in reference to the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. On about the 14th day of December 2020, Stephen Lee attempted to commit the felony offense of influencing witnesses in Fulton County, Georgia, by traveling to the home of Ruby Freeman, Fulton County, Georgia election worker, and speaking to a neighbor with intent to knowingly engage in misleading conduct towards Ruby Freeman by purporting to offer her help and with intent to influence her testimony in an official proceeding in Fulton County, Georgia, concerning events at State Farm Arena and the presidential election in Georgia. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 15th day of December 2020, Stephen Lee attempted to commit the felony offense of influencing witnesses in Fulton County, Georgia by traveling to the home of Ruby Freeman, Fulton County, Georgia election worker, and knocking on her door with intent to knowingly engage in misleading conduct towards Ruby Freeman by purporting to offer her help and with intent to influence her testimony in an official proceeding in Fulton County, Georgia, concerning events at State Farm Arena and the presidential election in Georgia. This was an act of racketeering. On or between the 15th day of December 2020 and the 4th day of January 2021, Stephen Lee solicited Harrison Floyd, an individual associated with the organization Black Voices for Trump, to assist with his effort to speak to Ruby Freeman, Fulton County, Georgia election worker. Stephen Lee stated to Harrison Floyd that Freeman was afraid to talk to Stephen Lee because he was a white man. On about the 18th day of December 2020, Trump met with Giuliani, Sidney Powell, unindicted co-conspirator individual 20, whose identity is known to the grand jury, and others at the White House. The individuals present at the meeting discussed certain strategies and theories intended to influence the outcome of the presidential election, including seizing voting equipment and appointing Sidney Powell as special counsel with broad authority to investigate allegations of voter fraud in Georgia and elsewhere. On about the 21st day of December 2020, Sidney Powell sent an email to the Chief Operations Officer of Sullivan Strickler LLC and instructed him that she and unindicted co-conspirators, individuals 6, 21, and 22, whose identities are known to the grand jury, were to immediately receive a copy of all data obtained by Sullivan Strickler LLC from Dominion Voting Systems Equipment in Michigan. On about the 22nd day of December 2020, Mark Meadows traveled to the Cobb County Civic Center in Cobb County, Georgia, and attempted to observe the signature match audit being performed there by law enforcement officers from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State, despite the fact that the audit process was not open to the public. While present at the center, Mark Meadows spoke to Georgia's Deputy Secretary of State Jordan Fuchs, Office of the Georgia Secretary of State Chief Investigator Francis Watson, Georgia Bureau of Investigation Special Agent in Charge Bahan Rich, and others who prevented Mark Meadows from entering into the space where the audit was being conducted. On or about the 23rd day of December 2020, Trump placed a telephone call to Office of the Georgia Secretary of State Chief Investigator Francis Watson that had been previously arranged by Mark Meadows. During the phone call, Trump falsely said that he had won the presidential election in Georgia by hundreds of thousands of votes, and said to Watson that, when the right answer comes out, you'll be praised. On about the 23rd day of December 2020, Eastman sent an email to Kenneth Chesbell and unindicted co-conspirator individual 3, whose identity is known to the grand jury, with the subject forward draft 2 with edits. In the email, Eastman attached memorandum titled Privileged and Confidential, December 23rd memo on January scenario.docx, and said, as for hearings, think both are unnecessary. The fact that we have multiple slates of electors demonstrates the uncertainty of either. That should be enough, and agree with Ken that judiciary hearings on the constitutionality of the ECA could invite counter-views that we do not believe should constrain Pence or Grassley in the exercise of power they have under the 12th Amendment. But for them just to act boldly and be challenged, since the challenge would likely lead to the court denying review on non-justiciable political question grounds. On about the 25th day of December 2020, Trump placed a telephone call to Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives, Rusty Bowers, with the purpose of soliciting, requesting, and importuning Bowers to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona. During the call, Bowers stated to Trump, I voted for you, worked for you, campaigned for you, I just won't do anything illegal for you. On or about the 27th day of December 2020, Mark Meadows sent a text message to Office of the Georgia Secretary of State Chief Investigator Francis Watson that stated, "Is there any way to speed up Florida County signature verification in order to have the results before January 6th if the Trump campaign assists financially?" On about the 27th day of December 2020, Trump solicited acting United States Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and acting United States Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue to make false statements by stating, "To say that the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressmen." On about the 20th day of December 2020, Jeffrey Clark attempted to commit the felony offense of false statements and writings in Florida County, Georgia by knowingly and willfully making false writing and document known to the same to contain the false statement that the United States Department of Justice had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states, including the state of Georgia. Said statement being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state government and county and city law enforcement agencies. And on or about the 20th day of December 2020, Jeffrey Clark sent an email to acting United States Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and acting United States Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue and requested authorization to send said false writing and document to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives David Ralston, and President Pro Tempore of the Georgia Senate Butch Midler, which constitutes a substantial step towards the commission of false statements and writings. This was an act of racketeering. On or about the 28th day of December 2020, Jeffrey Clark solicited acting United States Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and acting United States Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue to sign and send document that falsely stated that the United States DOJ had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states, including the state of Georgia, to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives David Ralston, and President Pro Tempore of the Georgia Senate Butch Midler. On or about the 30th day of December 2020, Trump caused to be tweeted from his account, "Hearings from Atlanta on the Georgia election overturn now being broadcast. Check it out at OANN, at Newsmax, and many more. At Brian Kemp should resign from office. He's an obstructionist who refuses to admit that we won Georgia. Big also won the other swing states." On or about the 30th day of December, Trump tweeted, "Hearings from Atlanta on the Georgia election overturn now being broadcast live via OSB Network." With a link. This was the On or about the 30th day of December 2020, Giuliani, Ray Smith III, and Robert Treaty committed the felony offense of solicitation or violation of oath by public officer in Fulton County, Georgia, by soliciting, requesting, and importuning certain public officers then serving as elected members of the Georgia Senate and present at Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting, including unindicted co-conspirator Individual 8, whose identity is known to the grand jury, Senators Brandon Beach, Bill Heath, William Legan, Michael Rhett, and Blake Tillery, to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath by public officer by unlawfully appointing presidential electors from the state of Georgia, and willful intentional violation of the terms of the oath of said person as prescribed by law, with intent that certain person engage in said conduct. On about the 30th day of December 2020, Giuliani committed the felony offense of false statements and writings in Fulton County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate President Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. That Fulton County election workers fraudulently counted certain ballots as many as 5 times at State Farm Arena on November 3, 2020, that 2,560 veterans voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia, that 10,315 dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state enforcement, and county and state law enforcement agencies. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 30th day of December 2020, Ray Smith III committed the felony offense of false statements and writings in Fulton County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate President and Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. That Georgia Secretary of State General Counsel Ryan Germany stated that his office had sent letters to 8,000 people who voted illegally in the presidential election and told them not to vote in the January 5, 2021 runoff election. That the Georgia Secretary of State admitted that they had 90% accuracy rate in the presidential election and that there's still a 10% margin that's not accurate. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, departments and agencies of state government and county and city law enforcement agencies. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 30th day of December 2020, Robert Treaty committed the felony offense of false statements and writings in Fulton County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate President and Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. The poll watchers and media at State Farm Arena were told late in the evening on November 3, 2020 that the vote count was being suspended until the next morning and to go home because of a major water main break. That Fulton County election workers at State Farm Arena voted the same ballots over and over again on November 3, 2020. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state government and county and city law enforcement agencies. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 30th day of December 2020, Trump tweeted, "We now have far more votes than the need to flip Georgia in the presidential race. Massive voter fraud took place. Thank you to the Georgia legislature for today's revealing meeting." On about the 31st day of December 2020, Georgia Ellis wrote memorandum titled Memorandum Re Constitutional Analysis of Vice President of Authority for January 6, 2021 Electoral College vote count to Trump. The memorandum outlined strategy for disrupting and delaying the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states, and stated, "The Vice President should therefore not open any of the votes from 6 states, including Georgia, that were falsely characterized as having electoral delegates in dispute." On about the 31st day of December 2020, Trump and Eastman committed the felony offense of filing false documents in Fulton County, Georgia, by knowingly filing a document titled Verified Complaint for Emergency, Injunctive, and Declaratory Relief in the matter of Trump v. Kemp case in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, Court of the United States having reason to know that said document contained at least one of the following materially false statements: that as many as 2,506 felons with an uncompleted sentence voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia, that at least 66,247 underage people voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia, that at least 2,423 individuals voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia who were not listed in the state's records as having been registered to vote, that at least 1,043 individuals voted illegally in the presidential election who had illegally registered to vote using postal office boxes as their habitation, that as many as 10,315 or more dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia, that deliberate misinformation was used to instruct the Republican poll watchers and members of the press to leave the premises for the night at approximately 10 p.m. on November 3, 2020 at State Farm Arena in Fulton County, Georgia. Earlier on the same day, Eastman sent an email to attorneys associated with the Trump campaign admitting his knowledge that at least some of the allegations in the verified complaint were not accurate. This filing was an act of racketeering. We'll get him though. On about the first day of January 2021, Kenneth Chesbo sent an email to Eastman, an unindicted co-conspirator individual 3, whose identity is known to the grand jury. In the email, Kenneth Chesbo outlined strategy for disrupting and delaying the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and other states. On about the second day of January 2021, Scott Hall, Georgia bail bondsman, placed a telephone call to Jeffrey Clark and discussed the presidential election in Georgia. The telephone call was 63 minutes in duration. On about the second day of January 2021, Jeffrey Clark solicited acting United States Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and acting United States Deputy Attorney General Rich Donahue to sign and send documentation that falsely stated that the United States DOJ had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states, including the state of Georgia, to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives David Ralston, and President Pro Tempore of the Georgia Senate Butch Miller. On or about the second day of January 2021, Trump and Mark Meadows committed the felony offense of solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer in Fulton County, Georgia, by unlawfully soliciting, requesting, and importuning Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, public officer, to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath by a public officer, by unlawfully altering, unlawfully adjusting, and otherwise unlawfully influencing the certified returns for presidential elections for the presidential elections in Georgia, in willful and intentional violation of the terms of the oath of said person, is prescribed by law with the intent that said person engage in said conduct. On about the second day of January 2021, Trump committed the felony offense of false statements and writings of Fulton County, Georgia, by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements or representations to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, Georgia Deputy Secretary of State Jordan Fuchs, and Georgia Secretary of State General Counsel Ryan Germany. That anywhere from 250 to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls of the presidential election in Georgia, that thousands of people were attempted to vote in the presidential election in Georgia and were told that they could not because a ballot had already been cast in their name, that 4,502 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who were not on the voter registration list, that 904 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who were registered at an address that was a post office box, that Ruby Freeman was a professional vote scammer and no political operative, that Ruby Freeman, her daughter, and others were responsible for fraudulently awarding at least 18,000 ballots to Joseph Biden at State Farm Arena in the presidential election in Georgia, There are close to 5,000 dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia. There are 139% of people voted in the presidential election in Detroit. There are 200,000 more votes were recorded than the number of people who voted in the presidential election in Pennsylvania. There are thousands of dead people voted in the presidential election in Michigan. There will be humans stuffed the ballot boxes. There hundreds of thousands of ballots have been dumped into Fulton County and another county adjacent to Fulton County in the presidential election in Georgia. That he won the presidential election in Georgia by 400,000 votes. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments, and agencies of state government. This was an act of racketeering. On or about the 3rd day of January 2021, Trump tweeted, "I spoke to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger yesterday about Fulton County voter fraud in Georgia. He was unwilling and unable to answer questions such as the ballots on a table scam, ballot destruction, out-of-state voters, dead voters, and more. He has no clue." On or about the 3rd day of January 2021, Stephanie, Harrison, Floyd, and Trevian Cuddy placed multiple telephone calls and sent text messages to each other and to other individuals involved in the conspiracy. They include the following. At 7:48 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Ruby Freeman, a Fulton County, Georgia election worker that was unsuccessful. At 7:49 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Ruby Freeman that was unsuccessful. At 7:49 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Trevian Cuddy. At 7:53 p.m., Harrison Floyd sent a text message to Ruby Freeman. At 8:03 p.m., Trevian Cuddy placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. At 11 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to unindicted co-conspirator individual 23, whose identity is known to the grand jury. At 8:18 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Stephen Lee. At 8:48 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Trevian Cuddy. At 9:16 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Trevian Cuddy. At 9:33 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Trevian Cuddy. At 9:50, Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Stephen Lee. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Trevian Cuddy, having been recruited by Harrison Floyd, traveled from Chicago, Illinois to Atlanta, Georgia, and caused a certain individual, whose identity is known to the grand jury, to pick her up from the train station in Fulton County, Georgia, for the purpose of attempting to contact Ruby Freeman, Fulton County, Georgia election worker. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Trevian Cuddy traveled to Ruby Freeman's home in Cobb County, Georgia, and attempted to contact her but was unsuccessful. Trevian Cuddy spoke with Freeman's neighbor and falsely said that she was a crisis manager attempting to help Freeman before leaving Freeman's home. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Trevian Cuddy, while in Fulton County, Georgia, placed a telephone call to Ruby Freeman and said that Freeman was in danger. Trevian Cuddy said that she could help Freeman and requested that Freeman meet with and speak to her that night at Cobb County Police Department precinct in Cobb County, Georgia. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Trevian Cuddy traveled to Cobb County Police Department precinct in Cobb County, Georgia, and met with and spoke to Ruby Freeman for approximately 1 hour. Harrison Floyd joined the meeting by telephone. Trevian Cuddy and Harrison Floyd stated to Freeman that she needed protection and reported to offer her help. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Stephanie, Harrison Floyd, and Trevian Cuddy committed the felony offense of solicitation of false statements and writings in Cobb County, Georgia, by soliciting, requesting, and importuning Ruby Freeman, Fulton County, Georgia election worker, to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of false statements and writings by knowingly and willfully making false statements and representations concerning events at State Farm Arena in the presidential election in Georgia. Said statement and representation will be within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state government, and county and state law enforcement agencies, with intent that said person engaged in said conduct. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Stephanie, Harrison Floyd, and Trevian Cuddy committed the felony offense of influencing witnesses in Fulton County, Georgia, by knowingly and unlawfully engaging in misleading conduct towards Ruby Freeman, Fulton County, Georgia election worker, by saying that she needed protection and by purporting to offer her help with intent to influence her testimony in an official proceeding in Fulton County, Georgia, concerning events at State Farm Arena in the presidential election in Georgia. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Stephanie, Harrison Floyd, and Trevian Cuddy placed multiple telephone calls and sent text messages to each other and to other individuals involved in the conspiracy. They include the following. At 9:41 a.m., Stephanie placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. At 11:24 a.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to David Schaefer. At 12:25 p.m., Stephanie placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. At 12:32 p.m., Stephanie sent a text message to Harrison Floyd. At 8:10 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to David Schaefer. At 10 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Stephen Lee. At 10:19 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Trevian Cuddy. At 10:43 p.m., Trevian Cuddy placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. At 11:10 p.m., Trevian Cuddy placed a phone call to Harrison Floyd. At 12:12 a.m. on January 3rd, 2021, Trevian Cuddy placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. On about the 4th day of January 2020, Eastman placed a telephone call to Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives, Rusty Bowers, and solicited, requested, and importuned Bowers to unlawfully appoint presidential electors from Arizona. During the telephone call, Bowers declined to comply with Eastman's request and stated that he would not risk violating his oath of office. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Kenneth Chesbo sent an email to Eastman with the subject "Forward Draft 2 with edits," and included within the body of the email another email that Kenneth Chesbo previously sent to Giuliani with the subject "Privileged and confidential brief notes on President of the Senate strategy." In the email, Kenneth Chesbo outlined multiple strategies for disrupting and delaying the joint sessions of Congress on January 6, 2021, the date prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states, and stated that the outcomes of any of these strategies were preferable to allowing the Electoral Count Act to operate by its terms. On about the 4th day of January 2021, Trump and Eastman met with Mike Pence, Chief of Staff to the Vice President Mark Short, and Counsel to the Vice President Greg Jacob in the Oval Office at the White House. During the meeting, Trump and Eastman argued to Pence that he could either reject the electoral votes from certain states or delay the joint session of Congress on January 6, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states, for the purpose of allowing certain state legislators to unlawfully appoint presidential electors in favor of Trump. During the meeting, Eastman admitted both options violated the ECA. On about the 5th day of January 2021, Janet Ellis wrote memorandum titled "RE, Vice President Authority in Counting Electors Pursuant to the U.S. Constitution and U.S. Code subsection N15." To an attorney associated with Trump, the memorandum outlined a strategy for disrupting and delaying the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, the date prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states, and say the Vice President should begin alphabetically in order of the states and coming first to Arizona, not open to purported certification, but simply stop the count at the juncture. On about the 5th day of January 2021, Robert Cheeley, Stephen Lee, Harrison Floyd, Trevin Kelly, and Scott Hall placed multiple telephone calls to each other and to other individuals involved in the conspiracy that include the following. At 11:32 a.m., Stephen Lee placed a telephone call to Trevin Kelly. At 12:14 p.m., Harrison Floyd, Trevin Kelly, Stephen Lee, and an unindicted co-conspirator individual 23, whose identity is known to the grand jury, participated in a four-way telephone call. At 12:19 p.m., Scott Hall placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 12:34 p.m., Scott Hall placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 1:07 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Scott Hall. At 1:09 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Scott Hall. At 2:30 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. At 2:45 p.m., Harrison Floyd placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 3:50, Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Scott Hall. At 4:42, Stephen Lee placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 4:50 p.m., Stephen Lee placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. At 5:05 p.m., Stephen Lee placed a telephone call to Harrison Floyd. At 7:19 p.m., Trevin Kelly placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 7:48 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Trevin Kelly. At 8:27 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Trevin Kelly. At 8:49 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Stephen Lee. At 9:18 p.m., Scott Hall placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 9:31 p.m., Trevin Kelly placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 10:14 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Stephen Lee. At 11:16 p.m., Robert Cheeley placed a telephone call to Trevin Kelly. At 11:25 p.m., Scott Hall placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. At 11:35 p.m., Robert Cheeley, Trevin Kelly, and Scott Hall participated in a three-way telephone call. And at 12:09 a.m. on January 6, 2021, Trevin Kelly placed a telephone call to Robert Cheeley. On about the 5th day of January 2021, Trump caused to be tweeted, "The Vice President has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors." On about the 5th day of January 2021, Eastman met with Chief of Staff to the Vice President Mark Short and Counsel to the Vice President Greg Jacob for the purpose of requesting that Pence reject slates of presidential electors from Georgia and certain other states during the joint sessions of Congress on January 6, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states. On about the 5th day of January 2021, Trump met with Mike Pence at the Oval Office at the White House. During the meeting, Trump stated that Pence had the power to decertify the presidential election results, that people treated that Pence wanted to play by Marquess of Queensberry rules. When Pence stated that it was his duty to support and defend the Constitution and that only Congress had the power to decide to reject slates of presidential electors, Trump stated that Pence was naive and played that he lacked courage, and stated that Pence was doing a great disservice. On or about the 5th day of January 2021, Trump placed a telephone call to Pence. During the telephone call, Trump and Eastman attempted to persuade Pence to reject slates of presidential electors or return the slates of presidential electors to state legislators. On or about the 5th day of January 2021, Trump placed a second telephone call to Pence. During the telephone call, Trump asked Pence if he had received a copy of a letter from a group of Pennsylvania legislators urging Congress to return the state's electoral college votes and stated to Pence, you gotta be tough tomorrow." On about the 5th day of January 2021, Trump issued a statement that the Trump campaign that falsely said the Vice President and I are in total agreement that the Vice President has the power to act, or Vice President has several options under the U.S. Constitution. He could decertify the results or send them back to the states for change in certification. He can also decertify their illegal and corrupt results and send them back to the House of Representatives for the one vote for one state tabulation. On about the 6th day of January 2021, Kathleen Latham placed a telephone call to Scott Hall. Several hours later, Scott Hall placed a telephone call to Kathleen Latham. During at least one of the phone calls, they discussed Scott Hall's request to assist with an unlawful breach of election equipment at the Coffee County Board of Election Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia. On about the 6th day of January 2021, Trump appealed and spoke at a rally at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. During the rally, Trump made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Georgia and announced by solicited Vice President Mike Pence to disrupt and delay the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states, and encouraged those in attendance at the rally to march to the U.S. Capitol. On about the 6th day of January 2021, Giuliani appeared and spoke at a rally at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. During the rally, Giuliani made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election in Georgia and elsewhere and solicited Vice President Mike Pence to disrupt and delay the joint session of Congress on January 6, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states. On about the 6th day of January 2021, Eastman appeared and spoke at a rally at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C. During the rally, Eastman made false statements concerning fraud in the presidential election and solicited Vice President Mike Pence to disrupt and delay the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states. On about the 6th day of January 2021, Trump tweeted, "If Vice President Pence comes through for us, we will win the presidency." Many states want to decertify the mistake they made in certifying incorrect, even fraudulent numbers and processes not approved by those state legislators, which it must be. Mike can send it back. Goddammit. On about the 6th day of January 2021, Trump caused to be tweeted, "States want to correct their votes, which they now know were based on irregularities and fraud plus corrupt process, never received legislative approval. All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states, and we win. Do it, Mike. This is time for extreme courage." On about the 6th day of January 2021, Trump placed a telephone call to Pence and solicited him to disrupt and delay the joint session of Congress on January 6, 2021, the day prescribed by law for counting votes cast by the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from Georgia and the other states. When Pence refused, Trump stated that Pence would go down as a wimp and that Pence was not protecting the United States. On about the 6th day of January 2021, Eastman sent an email to counsel to the Vice President Greg Jacob that said the Senate and House have both violated the ECA. This evening they debated the Arizona objections for more than hours. Violation of USC 17 and the VP allowed further debate or statements by leadership after the question had been voted upon. Violation of USC 17. And they had that debate upon motion approved by the VP in violation of the requirement in USC 15 that after the vote in the separate houses they shall immediately again meet. So now that the President has been said that the ECA is not quite so sacrosanct as was previously claimed, I implore you to consider one more relatively minor violation and adjourn for 10 days to allow the legislators to finish their investigations, as well as to allow full forensic audit of the massive amount of legal activity that has occurred here. If not, that moves the needle. At least a good portion of the 75 million people who support President Trump will have seen a process that allowed the illegality to be aired. John. On about the 7th day of January 2021, Kathleen Latham sent a text message to the Chief Operations Officer of Sullivan Strickler LLC with the address to the Douglas Municipal Airport in Coffee County, Georgia, to coordinate picking up Scott Hall from the airport and driving him to the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office for the purpose of assisting with the unlawful breach of election equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 7th day of January 2021, Scott Hall, an unindicted co-conspirator individual 24, whose identity is known to the grand jury, flew from DeKalb Peachtree Airport in DeKalb County, Georgia, to Douglas Municipal Airport in Coffee County, Georgia, for the purpose of assisting with the unlawful breach of election equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 7th day of January 2021, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton committed the felony offense of interference with primaries and elections in Coffee County, Georgia by willfully and non-lawfully tampering with electronic ballot markers and tabulating machines in Coffee County, Georgia. On about the 7th day of January 2021, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton committed the felony offense of unlawful possession of ballots in Coffee County, Georgia by causing certain members of the conspiracy who were not officers charged by law with the care of ballots and who were not persons entrusted by any such officer with the care of ballots for purposes required by law to possess official ballots outside the polling places in Coffee County, Georgia. On about the 7th day of January 2021, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Mr. Hampton committed the felony offense of computer theft in Coffee County, Georgia, by using a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority and with the intention of taking and appropriating information, data, and software, the property of Dominion Voting Systems Corporation, Coffee County, Georgia. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 7th day of January 2021, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton committed the felony offense of computer trespass in Coffee County, Georgia, by using a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority and with the intention of removing voter data and Dominion Voting Systems Corporation data from said computer in Coffee County, Georgia. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 7th day of January 2021, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton committed the felony offense of computer invasion of privacy in Coffee County, Georgia, by using a computer with the intention of examining personal voter data with knowledge that such examination was without authority. This was an act of racketeering. On between the 6th day of December 2020 and the 7th day of January 2021, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton committed the felony offense of conspiracy to defraud the state in Coffee County, Georgia, by unlawfully conspiring and agreeing to commit theft of voter data, property which was under the control of Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, state officer in his official capacity. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 9th day of January 2021, the 10th day of January 2021, the 11th day of January 2021, and the 13th day of January 2021, unidentified conspirator individual 25, whose identity is known to the grand jury, unlawfully accessed certain data copied from Dominion Voting Systems equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, by downloading said data from a server maintained by Sullivan Strickler, LLC. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 9th day of January 2021, the 10th day of January 2021, the 11th day, the 18th day, and the 19th day, unidentified co-conspirator individual 26, whose identity is unknown to the grand jury, unlawfully accessed certain data copied from Dominion Voting Systems equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office in the Coffee County, Georgia, by downloading said data from a server maintained by Sullivan Strickler, LLC. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 10th day of January 2021, the 12th day of January 13th, the 25th of February, and the 26th of February, unidentified co-conspirator individual 27, whose identity is known to the grand jury, unlawfully accessed certain data copied from Dominion Voting Systems equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, by downloading said data from a server maintained by Sullivan Strickler, LLC. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 13th day of January 2021, unidentified co-conspirator individual 28, whose identity is known to the grand jury, unlawfully accessed certain data copied from Dominion Voting Systems equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, by downloading said data from a server maintained by Sullivan Strickler, LLC. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 18th day of January 2021, Misty Hampton allowed unidentified co-conspirators individual 25 and 29, whose identities are known to the grand jury, to access non-public areas of the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, and facilitated their access to the Dominion Voting Systems equipment. On about the 22nd day of April 2021, unidentified co-conspirator individual 28, whose identity is known to the grand jury, sent an email to the Chief Operations Officer of Sullivan Strickler, LLC, directing him to transmit all data copied from Dominion Voting Systems equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, to unidentified co-conspirator individual 30, whose identity is known to the grand jury, an attorney associated with Sidney Powell and the Trump campaign. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 17th day of September 2021, Trump committed the felony offense of solicitation or violation of oath by public officer in Fulton County, Georgia, by unlawfully soliciting, requesting, and importuning Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, public officer, and to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of violation of oath by public officer, by unlawfully decertifying the election or whatever the correct legal remedy is, and announce the true winner, in a willful and intentional violation of the terms of the oath of said person as prescribed by law, with intent that said person engage in said conduct. On about the 17th day of September 2021, Trump committed the felony offense of false statements and writings in Fulton County, Georgia, by not only willfully and unlawfully making the following false statements in representation to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. As stated to you previously, the number of false and/or irregular votes is far greater than the need to change the Georgia election result. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state government and county and state law enforcement agencies. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 25th day of April 2022, David Schaefer committed the felony offense of false statements and writings in Fulton County, Georgia by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements and representations in the presence of Fulton County District Attorney's Office investigators: that he attended and convened the December 14, 2020 meeting of the Trump presidential election nominees in Fulton County, Georgia, but that he did not call each of the individual members and notify them of the meeting or make any of the other preparations necessary for the meeting. That a court reporter was not present at the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential election nominees in Fulton County, Georgia. Or that a court reporter was not present. Such statements being within the jurisdiction of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, department and agency of the government of the county of the state. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 7th day of May 2022, Sidney Powell made at least one of the following false statements and representations in sworn deposition with the United States House of Representatives Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol: that she didn't have any role in really setting up efforts to access voting machines in Coffee County, Georgia, or Antrim County, Michigan; that she was aware that there was an effort by some people to get access to voting machines in Georgia, but she did not know what happened with that, and she did not remember whether that was Rudy or other folks. On or about the first day of September 2022, Kathleen Latham committed the felony offense of perjury in Houston County, Georgia by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements and deposition in the matter of Curling v. Raffensperger and the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia judicial proceeding after having been administered lawful oath; and that she was only present at the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office in Coffee County, Georgia for just a few minutes on January 7, 2021, that she only walked into the front part of the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office on January 7, 2021 and didn't go into the office; that she had no idea if employees of Sullivan Strickler met Eric Cheney at the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office on January 7, 2021; that she did not see Misty Hampton at the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office on January 7, 2021; that her only interaction with Scott Hall at the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office on January 7, 2021 was meeting him, speaking to him outside the office, and then leaving the office; that she did not see Scott Hall speak to anyone other than herself at the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office on January 7, 2021. Said statements being material to the accused's own involvement in the January 7, 2021 unlawful breach of election equipment at the Coffee County Board of Elections registration office, and to the accused's communication with others involved the issues in question. This was an act of racketeering. On about the 15th day of September 2022, Robert Cheatley committed the felony offense of perjury in Fulton County, Georgia by knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully making at least one of the following false statements before the Fulton County Special Purpose Grand Jury judicial proceeding after having been administered a lawful oath: that he was unaware of the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia until after the meeting had already taken place; that he had no substantive conversations with anyone concerning the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia until after the meeting had already taken place; that he never suggested to anyone that the Trump presidential elected nominees in Georgia should meet on December 14, 2020; that the only communication he had with Eastman concerning the presidential election was for the purpose of connecting Eastman to Georgia Senator Brandon Beach, an unindicted co-conspirator individual 8 whose identity is known to the grand jury for possible legal representation; that he never worked to connect Eastman with any Georgia legislators other than Georgia Senator Brandon Beach, an unindicted co-conspirator individual 8 whose identity is known to the grand jury. Said statements being material to the accused's own involvement in the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia, and to the accused's communication with others involved in the meeting, the issues in question. This was an act of racketeering. The acts set forth above were committed in furtherance of the conspiracy alleged above and had the same and similar intents, results, accomplices, victims, and methods of commission, and otherwise were interrelated by distinguishing characteristics and were not isolated acts. And that is count 1. Jesus Christ. Hold on. Don't question why I have so many bottles. Count 2 we would read, but it has been dismissed by a judge. Count 3, Giuliani. 1 count of false statements and writings, OCGA Section 161020, a person who knowingly and willfully falsifies, conceals, or covers up by any trick, scheme, or device a material fact, makes a false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation, or makes or uses any false writing or document, knowing that same to contain any false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or entry in any manner within the jurisdiction of any department or agency of state government or of the government of any county, city, or other political subdivision of the state. Count 3. Giuliani in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia on or about the third day of December 2020 knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate President and Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. That at least 96,000 mail-in ballots were counted at the November 3rd presidential election in Georgia, despite there being no record of those ballots having been returned to county election office. The Dominion voting systems machine used in the presidential election in Antrim County, Michigan, mistakenly recorded 6,000 votes for Biden when the votes were actually cast for Trump. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigations, departments, and agencies of state government and county and city law enforcement agencies, contrary to the laws of said state, the good order, peace, and dignity thereof. Count 4, Ray Smith III, one count of false statements and writings, OCGA, section 161020. Any person who knowingly falsifies, blah, 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 blah. Count 4, Ray Smith III is in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia on or about the third day of December 2020, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate President and Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. The 2,506 felons voted illegally in the Georgia presidential election. That's 66,248. Underage people were legally registered to vote before their 17th birthday prior to the presidential election in Georgia. That at least 2,423 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who were not listed as registered to vote. There were 1,043 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who had illegally registered to vote using post office box. That 10,315 or more dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia. The Fulton County election workers at State Farm Arena ordered poll watchers and members of the media to leave the tabulation area on the night of November 3rd, 2020, and continue to operate after ordering everyone to leave. Said statements being within the blah 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 and the court order. Count 5 was also dismissed. Count 6 also dismissed. Count 7, Giuliani. One count of false statements and writings. Count 7, Giuliani in the county of Fordham in the state of Georgia on or about the 10th day of December 2020 knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia House of Representatives, President House Governmental Affairs Committee meeting. That is quite clear from the State Farm Arena video from November 3rd, 2020 that Fulton County election workers were stealing votes and that Georgia officials were covering up crimes in plain sight. That State Farm Arena on November 3rd, 2020, Democratic officials got rid of all the reporters, all the observers, anyone that couldn't be trusted, used the excuse of water main break, cleared out the voting area, and then went about their dirty, crooked business. That between 12,000 and 24,000 ballots were illegally counted by Fulton County election workers at State Farm Arena on November 3rd, 2020. That in Michigan, there were 700,000 more ballots counted than were sent out to voters in the November 3rd presidential election, which was accounted for by quadruple counting ballots. The Ruby Furman, Shay Moss, and an unidentified man were quite obviously surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine at State Farm Arena to be used to infiltrate the crooked Dominion voting machines. That 96,000 mail-in ballots were counted in the November presidential election in Georgia, despite there being no record of those ballots having been returned to county elections office. Says statements, blah 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 blah. Count 8, David Schaefer, Sean Still, and Kathleen Latham. One count of impersonating a public officer, OCGA 161023. A person is guilty of impersonating an officer when they falsely hold themselves out as a peace officer or other public officer or employee with intent to mislead another into believing that he is actually an officer. David Schaefer, Sean Still, and Kathleen Latham individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia on or about the 14th day of December 2020, unlawfully falsely held themselves out as duly elected and qualified presidential electors from the state of Georgia, public officers with intent to mislead the President of the United States Senate, the Archivist of the United States, the Georgia Secretary of State, and the Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, into believing that they actually were such officers by placing in the United States mail in said person's document titled Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 Electors from Georgia, contrary to the laws of Count 9, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, Ray Smith III, Robert Treaty, and Michael Roman. 1 count of conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer, OCGA 1648 and 1610-23. 1648, a person commits the offense of conspiracy to commit a crime when he, together with one or more persons, conspires to commit any crime, and any one or more of such persons does any overt act to affect the object of the conspiracy. 1610-23, a person is guilty of impersonating an officer when they falsely hoard themselves, blah, blah, blah. Count 9, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, Ray Smith III, Robert Treaty, and Michael Roman individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with indicted and unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia, on or between the 6th day of December 2020 and the 14th day of December 2020, unlawfully conspired to cause certain individuals to falsely hold themselves out as the duly elected and qualified presidential electors for the state of Georgia, public officers with intent to mislead the President of the United States Senate, the Archivist of the United States, the Georgia Secretary of State, and the Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, into believing that they were actually such officers. And the defense named in count 8 acting as co-conspirators as described above and incorporated by reference as if already set forth herein, falsely held themselves out as said public officers by placing in the United States mail to said persons document titled Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia and Fulton County, Georgia, which was an overt act to affect the object of the conspiracy contrary to the laws of Count 10, David Schaefer, Sean Still, and Kathleen Latham. 1 count of forgery in the first degree, OCGA, section 1691B. A person commits the offense of forgery in the first degree when with the intent to defraud, he or she knowingly makes, alters, or possesses any writing other than a check in a fictitious name or in such manner that the writing is made or altered purports to have been made by another person at another time with different provisions, or by authority of one who did not give such authority and utters or delivers such writing. Count 10, David Schaefer, Sean Still, and Kathleen Latham, individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia, on or by the 14th day of December 2020, unlawfully and with the intent to defraud, knowingly made document titled Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia, writing other than check in such manner that the writing as may purports to have been made by authority of the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from the state of Georgia, who did not give such authority, and other than delivered said document to the Archivist of the United States, contrary to the laws of said state. Count 11, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, Ray Smith III, Robert Treaty, and Michael Roman. 1 count of conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree, OCGA, subsection 1648, 1691B. We already did 1648. A person commits the offense of forgery in the first degree when, with the intent to defraud, he or she knowingly makes, alters, or possesses any writing other than a check in fictitious name, blah, 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 blah. Count 11, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, Ray Smith III, Robert Treaty, and Michael Roman individually and as persons concerned in the commission of crime, and together with indicted and unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia, on or between the 6th day of December 2020 and the 14th day of December 2020, unlawfully conspired with the intent to defraud to knowingly make document out Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia, writing other than check in such manner that the writing as may purports to have been made by authority of the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from the state of Georgia, who did not give such authority to utter and deliver said document to the Archivist of the United States, and the defense named in count 10 acting as co-conspirators as described above and incorporated by reference as if already set forth herein, made said document in Fulton County, Georgia, and uttered and delivered said document to the Archivist of the United States in Fulton County, Georgia, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Contrary to blah, 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 blah. Count 12, David Schaefer, Sean Still, and Kathleen Latham. 1 count of false statements and writings. Already did that. Count 12, David Schaefer, Sean Still, and Kathleen Latham individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia, on or about the 14th day of December 2020, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made and used false document titled Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia, with knowledge that said document contained the false statement, "We, the undersigned, being the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America for the state of Georgia, do hereby certify the following. Said document being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Office of the Governor of Georgia, departments and agencies of state government." Count 13, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Chesebro, Ray Smith III, Robert Treaty, and Michael Roman. 1 count of conspiracy to commit false statements and writings, OCGA, 1648, 1620, what I did. Any person who knowingly and willfully falsifies, conceals, or covers by any trick, scheme, or device, material fact, making false, blah, blah, blah. Count 13, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Cheshire, Ray Smith III, Robert Shelley, and Michael Wellman individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with indicted and unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia, on and between the 6th day, December 2020, and the 14th day, December 2020, unlawfully conspired to knowingly and willfully make and use false documents titled Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia, with knowledge that said document contained the false statement, with the undersigned being the duly elected and qualified electors for the President and Vice President of the United States of America for the state of Georgia, to hereby certify the following. Said document being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Office of the Governor of Georgia, departments and agencies of state governments, and the defense name in count 12, acting as co-conspirators as described above, incorporated by reference as illfully set forth herein, made and used said document for County, Georgia, which will avert acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 14, David Schaefer, Sean Stowe, and Kathleen Latham. One account of criminal attempt to commit filing false documents. OCGA, subsection 1641 and 161020, 1B1. 1641, a person commits the offensive criminal attempt when, with intent to commit a specific crime, he performs any act which constitutes substantial steps towards commission of that crime. 161020.1b1. As used in this code section, the term document means information that is inscribed on a tangible medium or that is stored in an electronic or other medium is in retrievable and perceivable form and shall include but shall not be limited to liens, encumbrances, documents of title, instruments relating to its security interest, and or title to real or personal property or other record statements or representation of fact, law, right, or opinion. Notwithstanding Code Section 161020 and 161071, it should be unlawful for any person to knowingly file, enter, or record any document in a public record or court of this state of the United States, knowing or having reason to know that such document is false or contains a material, false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation. Count 14, David Schaefer, Sean Stowe, and Kathleen Latham, individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and the state of Georgia, on or by the 14th day of December 2020, unlawfully with intent to commit the crime of filing false documents, placing the United States mail document titled Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia, addressing the Chief Judge, the U.S. District Court, Northern District of Georgia, 2188 Richard D. Russell Federal Office Building, U.S. Courthouse, 75 Ted Turner Drive, Southwest Atlanta, Georgia, 30303. Or 30303. Substantial step towards the commission of filing false documents with intent to knowingly file, enter, and record said document in court of the United States, having reason to know that said document contains a materially false statement, with the undersigned being the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America for the state of Georgia, he hereby certify the following. Count 15, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Cheshire, Ray Smith III, Robert Shelley, and Michael Wellman, one count conspiracy to commit filing false document. We've already went through this. Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Cheshire, Ray Smith III, Robert Shelley, and Michael Wellman individually and as persons concerned in the commission of crime, and together with indicted and unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and the state of Georgia, on and between the 6th day of December 2020 and the 14th day of December 2020. Unlawfully conspired to knowingly file, enter, and record document entitled Certificate of the Votes of the 2020 electors from Georgia in court of the United States, having reason to know that said document contained the materially false statement, with the undersigned being the duly elected and qualified electors for President and Vice President of the United States of America with the state of Georgia, to hereby certify the following. And the defense named in count 14 acts as co-conspirators as described above and incorporated by reference and illegally set forth herein, placing the United States mail said document addressed to Chief Judge, U.S. District Court, Northern District of Georgia, 2188 Richard D. Russell Federal Office Building, and U.S. Courthouse, 75 Ted Turner Drive, Southwest Atlanta, Georgia, 30303, in Ford County, Georgia, which was an overt act to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 16, David Schaefer and Sean Stowe, one count of forgery in the first degree. OCGA 1691B, as used in the section, the term bank means incorporated bank, savings bank, banking companies, trust companies, credit unions, and other corporations doing a banking business. Check means any instrument for the payment or transmission of money payable on demand and drawn on the bank. Writing includes but shall not be limited to printing or any other method of recording information, money, coins, tokens, stamps, seals, credit cards, badges, trademarks, and other symbols of value, right, privilege, or identification. A person commits the offense of forgery in the first degree when, with the intent to defraud, he or she knowingly makes, alters, or possesses any writing other than a check inflicted its name or in such manner that the writing or as made or altered purport or purports to have been made by another person and at the time with different provisions or by authority of one who did not give such authority and others or deliver such writings. Count 16, David Schaefer and Sean Stowe individually and as persons concerned with the commission of a crime and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham in the state of Georgia on or about the 14th day of December 2020 unlawfully and with the intent to defraud an only made document titled "We" notice of filing of electoral college vacancy, writing other than check in such manner that the writing is may purport to have been made by the authority of the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from the state of Georgia who did not give such authority and delivered said document to the archivist of the United States and the office of the governor of Georgia. Count 17, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Cheswell, Ray Smith III, Robert Trudy, and Michael Roman. One count of conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree. We already did that. Count 17, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Cheswell, Ray Smith III, Robert Trudy, and Michael Roman individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with indicted and unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia on and between the 6th day of December 2020 and the 14th day of December 2020, unlawfully conspired with the intent to defraud and knowingly make document titled "We" notice of filing of electoral college vacancy, writing other than check in such manner that the writing is made purports to have been made by the authority of the duly elected and qualified presidential electors from the state of Georgia who did not give such authority and to other and deliver said document to the archivist of the United States and the office of the governor of Georgia, and the defendants named Count 16 acting as co-conspirators as described above and incorporated by references willfully set forth herein, made said document in Fordham County, Georgia, and other than delivered said document to the archivist of the United States and the office of the governor of Georgia in Fordham County, Georgia, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 18, David Schaefer and Sean Stowe. One count of false statements and writings, OCGA 161020. Count 18, David Schaefer and Sean Stowe individually and as persons concerned with the commission of a crime and together with the unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham in the state of Georgia on about the 14th day of December 2020, lawfully, willfully, and unlawfully made and used false document titled "Notice of Filing of Electoral College Vacancy" with knowledge that said document contained the false statements that David Schaefer was chairman at the 2020 Georgia Electoral College meeting and Sean Stowe was secretary of the 2020 Georgia Electoral College meeting. Said document being within the jurisdiction of the office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the office of the governor of Georgia, departments and agencies of state government contrary to the laws. Count 19, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Cheswell, Ray Smith III, Robert Trudy, and Michael Roman. One count of conspiracy to commit false statements and writings. Count 19, Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Kenneth Cheswell, Ray Smith III, Robert Trudy, and Michael Roman individually and as persons concerned with the commission of crime and together with indicted and unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia on and between the 6th day of December 2020 and the 14th day of December 2020 unlawfully conspired to knowingly and willfully make and use false document titled "Notice of Filing of Electoral College Vacancy," with knowledge that said document contained the false statements that David Schaefer was chairman at the 2020 Georgia Electoral College meeting and Sean Stowe was secretary of the 2020 Georgia Electoral College meeting. Said document being within the jurisdiction of the office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the office of the governor of Georgia, departments and agencies of state government, and the defendants named in court in count 18 acting as co-conspirators as described above and incorporated by reference as willfully set forth herein, made and used said document in Fordham County, Georgia, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 20, Stephen Lee. One count of criminal attempt to commit influencing witnesses, OCGA, subsection 1641, 1610-93B1A. Wait, did that? 1610-93B1A. It shall be unlawful for any person knowingly to use intimidation, physical force, or threats to persuade another person by means of corruption or to attempt to do so, or to engage in misleading conduct towards another person with intent to influence, delay, or prevent the testimony of any person in an official proceeding. Man, where did I include that? Count 20. Stephen Lee in the county of Fordham in the state of Georgia on the 14th day of December 2020, unlawfully with intent to commit the crime of influencing witnesses, traveled to the home of Ruby Freeman, Fordham County, Georgia election worker, and spoke to a neighbor, substantial step towards the commission of influencing witnesses with intent to knowingly engage in misleading conduct towards Ruby Freeman by purporting to offer her help, and with intent to influence the testimony in an official proceeding in Fordham County, Georgia, concerning events at State Farm Arena in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia, said day being material element of the offense. Count 21 is definitely one count of criminal attempt to commit influencing witnesses. Same thing. Count 21 is definitely in the county of Fordham, state of Georgia, on the 13th day of December 2020, unlawfully with intent to commit the crime of influencing witnesses, traveled to the home of Ruby Freeman, Fordham County, Georgia election worker, and knocked on her door, a substantial step toward the commission of influencing witnesses with intent to knowingly engage in misleading conduct towards Ruby Freeman, by purporting to offer her help and with intent to influence her testimony in an official proceeding in Fordham County, Georgia, concerning events at State Farm Arena in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia, said state being material element of the offense. Count 22. Jeffrey Clark. One count of criminal attempt to commit false statements in writings, OCGA 1641, 1620. Count 22. Jeffrey Clark individually and as a person concerned in the commission of crime and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia on and between the 20th day of December 2020 and the 2nd day of January 2021, unlawfully with intent to commit the crime of false statements in writings, knowingly and willfully made false statements and document knowing the same to contain the false statement that the United States DOJ had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states, including the state of Georgia, said statement being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state government and county and state law enforcement agencies, and on or about the 28th day of December 2020, the said accused sent an email to Acting United States Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and Acting United States Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue and requested authorization to send said false writing and document to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives David Ralston, and President Pro Tempore of the Georgia Senate Buck Mueller. And on or about the 2nd day of January 2021, the said accused met with Acting United States Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and Acting United States Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue and requested authorization to send said false writing and document to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives David Ralston, and President Pro Tempore of the Georgia Senate Butch Miller, and said acts constituted substantial steps towards the commission of false statements and writings, and said conduct committed outside the state of Georgia constituted an attempt to commit crimes within the state of Georgia pursuant to OCGA 17-2-1B2. Count 23 was dismissed. Count 24, Giuliani, one count of false statements and writings. Count 24, Giuliani in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia, on or about the 30th day of December 2020, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations to two members of the Georgia Senate present at Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. In the Fulton County election workers fraudulently counted certain ballots as many as 5 times at the State Farm Arena on November 3rd, 2020, that 2,560 felons voted illegally in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia, that 10,315 dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies of state governments and county and city law enforcement agencies. Count 25, Ray Smith III, one count of false statements and writings, OCGA 16-10-20. Count 25, Ray Smith III in the county of Fordham, state of Georgia, on or by the 30th day of December 2020, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate President Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. That Georgia Secretary of State General Counsel Ryan Germany stated that his office had sent letters to 8,000 people who voted illegally in the presidential election, told them not to vote in the January 5th, 2021 runoff election. That the Georgia Secretary of State amended that they had 90% accuracy rate in the presidential election and that there's still a 10% margin that's not accurate. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation departments and agencies of state government and county and city law enforcement agencies contrary to the laws of such state. Count 26, Robert Chudy, one count of false statements and writings. Count 26, Robert Chudy in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia, on or by the 30th day of December 2020, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia Senate President and Senate Judiciary Subcommittee meeting. The poll watchers and media at State Farm Arena were told late in the evening of November 3rd, 2020, that the vote count was being suspended until the next morning to go home because of a major water main break. The Fulton County election workers at State Farm Arena voted the same ballots over and over again on November 3rd, 2020. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation departments and agencies of the state government and county and city law enforcement agencies. Count 27, Trump and Eastman, one count of filing false documents. We had that. Count 27, Trump and Eastman individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fort and State, Georgia, on or about the 31st day of December 2020, knowingly and unlawfully filed documents out verified complaint for emergency injunctive and declaratory relief in the matter of Trump v. Kemp. In the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia, Court of the United States, having reason to know that said document contained at least one of the following materially false statements: that as many as 2,506 felons with an uncompleted sentence voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia, that at least 66,247 underage people voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia, that at least 2,423 individuals voted illegally in the presidential election in Georgia who are not listed on the state's records as having been registered to vote, that at least 1,043 individuals voted illegally in the presidential election who had illegally registered to vote using postal office boxes as their habitation, that as many as 10,315 or more dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia, that deliberate misinformation was used to instruct Republican poll watchers and members of the press to leave the premises for the night at approximately 10 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020 at Safe Harbor Arena in Fulton County, Georgia. Count 28 was dismissed. Count 29, Trump, one count of false statements and writings. Count 29, Trump at the county of Fort and State, Georgia, on or about the second day of January 2021, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, Georgia Deputy Secretary of State Jordan Fuchs, and Georgia Secretary of State General Counsel Ryan Germany. That anywhere from 250,000 to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls in the presidential election in Georgia, that thousands of people were attempted to vote in the presidential election in Georgia and were told that they could not because ballots had already been cast in their name, that 4,502 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who were not on the voter registration list, the 904 people voted in the presidential election in Georgia who registered at an address that was a post office box that Ruby Freeman was a professional vote scammer and non-political operative, that Ruby Freeman, her daughter, and others were responsible for fraudulently awarding at least 18,000 ballots to Biden at Safe Harbor Arena in the presidential election in Georgia. That close to 5,000 dead people voted in the presidential election in Georgia. That 139% of people voted in the presidential election in Detroit. That 200,000 more votes were recorded than the number of people who voted in the presidential election in Pennsylvania. That thousands of dead people voted in the presidential election in Michigan. The Ruby Freeman stuffed the ballot boxes. Hundreds of thousands of ballots have been dumped into Fulton County and another county adjacent to Fulton County in the presidential election in Georgia. That he won the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia by 400,000 votes. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation departments and agencies of state government country. Count 30, Stephen Lee, Harrison Ford, and Trevian Cuddy. One count of conspiracy to commit solicitation of false statements and writings. 1648, 1647, 161020. Person commits the offense of conspiracy to commit a crime. Person commits the offense. A person commits the offense of criminal solicitation when, with intent that another person engaged in conduct constituting a felony, he solicits, requests, commands, importunes, or otherwise attempts to cause the other person to engage in such conduct. Count 30, Stephanie Harrison Ford and Trevian Kelly individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fort and state of Georgia, on or by the 4th day of January 2021, unlawfully conspired to solicit, request, and importune Ruby Freeman, Fulton County, Georgia election worker, to engage in conduct constituting the felony offense of false statements and writings by knowingly or willfully making false statement and representation concerning events at Safe Harbor Arena in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia. Such statement and representation being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and Georgia Bureau of Investigation, departments and agencies with state government and county and city law enforcement, agencies with intent that said person engage in said conduct, and Trevian Kelly traveled to Fulton County, Georgia, and placed telephone call to Ruby Freeman while in Fulton County, Georgia, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 31, Stephanie Harrison Ford and Trevian Cuddy. One count of influencing witnesses, OCGA 1610-93B1A. Oh, we have those. Count 31, Stephanie Harrison Ford and Trevian Cuddy individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime and together with with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia on or about the 4th day of January 2021, knowingly and unlawfully engaged in misleading conduct towards Ruby Freeman, Fordham County, Georgia election worker, by saying that she needed protection and by purporting to offer help with intent to influence her testimony in an official proceeding in Fordham County, Georgia, concerning events at State Farm Arena in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia. Count 32, Sidney Powell, Catherine Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton, one count of conspiracy to commit election fraud. Subsection 212603 and 212566. A person commits the offense of conspiracy to commit election fraud when he or she conspires or agrees with another to commit a violation of this chapter. The crime shall be complete when the conspiracy or agreement is effected in an overall act and furtherance thereof has been committed, regardless of whether the violation of this chapter is consummated. 212566. Any person who willfully prevents or attempts to prevent any poll officer from holding any primary election under this chapter uses or threatens violence in a manner that would prevent a reasonable poll officer actually prevents a poll officer from the execution of his or her duties or material interrupts or improperly and materially interferes with the execution of a poll officer's duties, willfully blocks or attempts to block the avenue to the door of any polling place, uses or threatens violence in a manner that would prevent a reasonable elector from voting or actually prevents any elector from voting, willfully prepares or presents to any poll officer a fraudulent voter's certificate not signed by the elector whose certificate it purports to be, knowingly deposits fraudulent ballots in the ballot box, knowingly registers fraudulent votes upon any voting machine, or willfully tampers with any elector's list, voter certificate, number list of voters, ballot box, voting machine, direct recording, electronic DRE equipment, or tabulating machine. Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton, individually and as persons concerned with the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia on and between the 1st day of December 2020 and the 7th day of January 2021, unlawfully conspired and agreed to willfully tamper with the electronic ballot markers and tabulating machines in the state of Georgia. And Sidney Powell entered into contract with Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fordham County, Georgia, delivered payment to Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fordham County, Georgia, and to cause employees of Sullivan Strickler LLC to travel from Fordham County, Georgia to Coffee County, Georgia, for the purpose of willfully tampering with said electronic ballot markers and tabulating machines, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. And Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton aided, abetted, and encouraged employees of Sullivan Strickler LLC in willfully tampering with electronic ballot markers and tabulating machines while inside the Coffee County Elections Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 33, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton, one count conspiracy to commit election fraud. Uh, 212574. Any person other than an officer charged by law with the care of ballots or a person entrusted by any such officer with the care of the same for a purpose required by law who has in his or her possession outside the polling place any official ballot shall be guilty of a felony. Count 33, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton, individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia on between the 1st day of December 2020 and the 7th day of January 2021, unlawfully conspired and agreed to cause certain members of the conspiracy who were not officers charged by law with the care of ballots and who were not persons entrusted by any such officer with the care of ballots for the purpose by law to possess official ballots outside the polling place in the state of Georgia. And Sidney Powell entered into contract with Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fordham County, Georgia, to deliver payments to Sullivan Strickler LLC in Fordham County, Georgia, and to cause employees in Sullivan Strickler LLC to travel from Fordham County, Georgia to Coffee County, Georgia, for the purpose of causing certain members of the conspiracy who were not officers charged by law with the care of ballots and who were not persons entrusted by any such officer with the care of ballots for purpose required by law to possess official ballots outside the polling place, which would not avert acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. And Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton aided, abetted, and encouraged employees of Sullivan Strickler LLC in accessing election equipment while inside the Coffee County Elections Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, for the purpose of causing certain members of the conspiracy who were not officers charged by law with the care of ballots and who were not persons entrusted by any such officers with the care of ballots for purpose required by law to possess official ballots outside the polling place, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy contrary to the laws of said state, the good order, peace, and dignity thereof. Didn't have to read that last point. Count 34, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton, one count of conspiracy to commit computer theft, OCGA, subsection 16993A. 16993A, Computer theft, any person who uses a computer or computer network with knowledge that such uses without authority and with the intention of 1. Taking or appropriating any property of another, whether or not with the intention of depriving their owner of possession. 2. Obtaining property by any deceitful means or artful practice. Or 3. Converting property to such person's use in violation of an agreement or other known legal obligation to make a specified application or deposition or disposition of such property shall be guilty of the crime of computer theft. Count 34. Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Ford and state of Georgia, on and between the 1st day of December 2020 and the 7th day of January 2021, unlawfully conspired to use a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority, and with the intention of taking and appropriating information, data, and software, the property of Dominion Voting Systems Corporation. And Sidney Powell entered into contract with Soderman Strickler LLC in Fort County, Georgia, blah, 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 that with the intention of taking and appropriating information, data, and software, the property of Dominion Voting Systems and Corporations, which will vote acts to affect the object of the conspiracy, and blah, 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 with the intention of taking and appropriating information, data, and software, the property of Dominion Voting Systems Corporation, alongside, which will vote acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Council though. Forty-one. Okay, almost done. 6 more counts to go. Count 35. Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton. 1 count conspiracy to commit computer trespass. Computer trespass, any person who uses a computer or computer network with knowledge that such use is without authority and with the intention of deleting or in any way removing, either temporarily or permanently, any computer program or data from a computer or computer network, obstructing, interrupting, or in any way interfering with the use of a computer program or data, or altering, damaging, or in any way causing the malfunction of a computer network or computer program, regardless of how long the alteration, damage, or malfunction persists, shall be guilty of the crime of computer trespass. Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton individually in the count on and between the 1st day of December 2020 and the 7th day of January 2021, unlawfully conspired to use a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority and with the intention of removing voter data and Dominion Voting Systems Corporation data from such computer. The contract stuff. Knowledge of using a computer with knowledge that such use was without authority with the intention of removing voter data and Dominion Voting Systems Corporation data from the computer, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. They abetted without authority and with the intention of removing voter data and Dominion Voting Systems Corporation data from the computer alongside the Coffee County Elections and Registration Office in Coffee County, Georgia, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 36, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, Missy Hampton. 1 count conspiracy to commit computer invasion of privacy. Computer invasion of privacy, any person who uses a computer or computer network with the intention of examining any employment, medical, salary, credit, or any other financial or personal data relating to any other person with knowledge that such examination is without authority shall be guilty of the crime of computer invasion of privacy. Count 36, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, Missy Hampton. Between the 1st day of December 2020 and the 7th day to unlawfully conspired to use a computer with the intention of examining personal voter data with knowledge that such examination was without authority. For the purpose of using a computer with the intention of examining personal voter data with knowledge that such examination was without authority, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. For the intention of examining personal voter data with knowledge that such examination was without authority, once at the Coffee County Elections Registration Office, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Just get me off these 4. Jesus Christ. Okay. Sidney Powell, count 37, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, Mr. Camden, and one count conspiracy to defraud the state, RCGA 1610-21. A person commits the offense of conspiracy to defraud the state when he conspires or agrees with another to commit theft of any property which belongs to the state or to any agency thereof, or which is under the control or possession of a state officer or employee in its official capacity. The crime shall be complete when the conspiracy or agreement is effected and an overt act in furtherance thereof has been committed, regardless of whether the theft is consummated. A person commits the offense of a conspiracy to defraud a political subdivision when he... No, that's not. Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, Mr. Hampton, individually and as persons concerned in the commission of a crime, and together with the unindicted co-conspirators in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia, on or between the 1st day of December 2020 and the 7th day of January 2021, unlawfully conspired and agreed to commit theft of voter data property which was under the control of Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, state officer in his official capacity. And Sidney Powell entered into contract with Sullivan Strickler LLC and Fordham County, Georgia, to deliver payments to Sullivan Strickler LLC and Fordham County, Georgia, and cause employees of Sullivan Strickler LLC to travel from Fordham County, Georgia, to Coffee County, Georgia, for the purpose of committing theft of voter data property which was under the control of Raffensperger, state officer in his official capacity, which will avert acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. And Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Missy Hampton aided, abetted, and encouraged employees of Sullivan Strickler LLC and accessing election equipment while inside the Coffee County election registration office in Douglas, Georgia, with the purpose of committing theft of voter data property which was under the control of Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, state officer in his official capacity, which were overt acts to affect the object of the conspiracy. Count 38 was dismissed. Count 39, Trump, 1 count of false statements and writings. Count 39, Trump, the county of Fordham and state of Georgia, on or about the 17th day of September 2021, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made the following false statement and representation to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. As stated to you previously, the number of false and irregular votes is far greater than needed to change the Georgia election result. Said statement being within the jurisdiction of the Office of the Georgia Secretary of State and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Departments and agencies of state governments and county and city law enforcement agencies. Count 40, David Schaefer, 1 count of false statements and writings. David Schaefer in the county of Fordham and state of Georgia, on or about the 25th day of April 2022, knowingly, willfully, and unlawfully made at least one of the following false statements and representations in the presence of Ford County District Attorney's Office investigators: that he attended and convened the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential-elect nominees in Ford County, Georgia, but that he did not call each of the individual members and notify them of the meeting or make any of the other preparedness necessary for the meeting. That court reporter was not present at a court reporter was not present at the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential-elect nominees in Fordham County, Georgia. Said statements being within the jurisdiction of the Fordham County District's Attorney Office, Department, and agency of the government of the county of the state. Finally, count 41, Robert Chile, 1 count of perjury. A person to whom a lawful oath or affirmation has been administered commits the offense of perjury when, in a judicial proceeding, he knowingly and willfully makes a false statement material to the issue or point in question. 161070A. Robert Treaty in the county of Fulton and state of Georgia, on or about the 15th day of December 2022, knowingly, willfully, and lawfully made at least one of the following false statements before the Fulton County Special Purpose Grand Jury judicial proceeding after having been administered a lawful oath. He was unaware of the December 14th, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential-elect nominees in Fulton County, Georgia, until after the meeting had already taken place, that he had no substantive conversation with anyone concerning the December 14th, 2020 meeting of Trump presidential-elect nominees in Fulton County, Georgia, until after the meeting had already taken place, that he never suggested to anyone that the Trump presidential-elect nominees in Georgia should meet on December 14th, 2020, that the only communication he had with John Eastman concerning the presidential election was for the purpose of connecting Eastman to Georgia Senator Brian Beach, an unindicted co-conspirator individual A whose identity is known to the grand jury for possible legal representation, and that he never worked to connect John Eastman with any Georgia legislator other than Georgia Senator Brandon Beach, and unindicted co-conspirator individual A whose identity is known to the grand jury. Said statements being material to the accused's own involvement in the December 14, 2020 meeting of Trump's presidential-elected nominees in Fulton County, Georgia, and to the accused's communication with others involved in said meeting, the issues in question contrary to the... Finally, the summary. Trump, along with co-conspirators, jointly and separately committed the crimes of racketeering, false statements and writings, impersonating a public officer, conspiracy to to commit impersonating a public officer, forgery in the first degree, conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree, conspiracy to commit false statements and writings, criminal attempt to commit filing false documents, criminal attempt to commit influencing witnesses, criminal attempt to commit false statements and writings, filing false documents, conspiracy to commit solicitation of false statements and writings, influencing witnesses, conspiracy to commit election fraud, conspiracy to commit computer theft, conspiracy to commit computer trespass, conspiracy to commit computer invasion of privacy, conspiracy to defraud the state, and perjury. These crimes were made in tandem with the objective of making it so Trump won the 2020 election. These crimes were committed in 6 ways: racketeering, the fake electors plot, interactions with public officials, the Coffee County breach, harassment of election workers, and lying to investigators. TLDR, lots of crimes committed to make Trump president. And if I'm not wrong, the Wikipedia page has a chart over this. Hold on. So weird. Where are you? Oh. Right here. That is the interactions. That's the little chart there, so yeah. Here we go. This right here. That's the little chart. So you have overall the racketeering, interactions with public officials, Clark Ellis Meadows, fake electors plot, Chesbo, Roman, Still, Schaefer, and the people doing both of that, Trump, Giuliani, Smith, Eastman, and Chile, and people doing that along with lying to investigators, Chile and Schaefer, and people doing the fake electors plot and the Coffee County breach. You got Latham, the Coffee County breach, Hale, Hall, Hampton Powell, and harassment of election workers, the Floyd Cuddy. So, just a neat little thing. Post-indictment releasing. Okay. Said that we're gonna get it done, we will get it done. Fani Willis provided all defendants the opportunity to voluntarily surrender by noon on August 25th, to which all accepted, and along with this, all defendants waived their right to appeal for the arraignment, and all pleaded not guilty to all charges. On the morning of Trump's planned surrender, paperwork was filed to change his legal counsel from Steve Sato to Drew Findling. On September 14th, Judge McCaffrey set a deadline of December 1st, 2023 for any pretrial motions by the co-defendants, Chesbo and Powell excluded. On December 1st, 2023, there was a pretrial hearing. Throughout August 19th to March 28th, multiple defendants asked for dismissal of charges on multiple bases. The case was requested by multiple defendants to be moved to federal court multiple times. Multiple defendants also asked for a speedy trial and or for their case to be severed from the others. On January 8th, 2024, Michael Roman's attorney filed with the court alleging that Fani Willis and Nathan Wade had a romantic relationship. Willis had hired Nathan Wade as special prosecutor in the Trump case in November 2021. The filing asserted that Willis went on vacation with Wade, and so Willis profited from hiring him, which would be a conflict of interest. The filing requested that charges against Roman be dropped. It also requested that Willis be disqualified from the case. Willis's office said it would motion to have this request dismissed. On January 25th, Trump joined Roman's efforts by filing a similar complaint. Wade was concurrently involved with divorce proceedings from his wife, Joycelyn, which had also begun in November 2021. On January 8th, 2024, Joycelyn Wade's attorney subpoenaed Willis to testify in the divorce case. On January 19th, Joycelyn Wade filed in her divorce case, showing that Nathan Wade had purchased a 2022 trip for himself and Willis to Miami with a Royal Caribbean cruise and a 2023 trip to San Francisco in a Napa Valley hotel. Clara Bowman, who the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reports may be his mother, came too. On January 22nd, a judge in Cobb County Superior Court unsealed the records of the Wade's ongoing divorce, with no reference to an alleged affair with Willis found at that court case. On January 30th, Nathan and Jocelyn Wade reached a temporary agreement on some of their issues. Willis, as well as Nathan Wade, had been scheduled to testify in the Wade's divorce, but their depositions were no longer needed. On January 4th, at an MLK Day service at Big Bethel AME Church, Willis made her first public comments about the allegation. She said Wade is qualified for his role and is paid the same rate as the other two special prosecutors on the case. According to the New York Times, Wade had little prior prosecutorial experience beyond being employed for about a year in the late 90s by the Cobb County Solicitor's Office, which prosecutes misdemeanors and traffic citations. On January 18th, with Willis unwilling to recuse herself, Judge McAfee scheduled a hearing on Roman's request to dismiss her from the case on February 2nd. The court deadline for Willis to respond to the allegation. She acknowledged she had been in a personal relationship with Wade since 2022, but said she had no financial or personal conflict of interest, and that there was no grounds for her dismissal. Willis and Wade were subpoenaed to testify at the February 15th hearing. 17 ethics experts, former prosecutors, and defense attorneys filed a front of the court brief with Judge McAfee on February 5th. They found that even if all of Roman's allegations were true, they would not even come close to requiring Willis to be removed from the case or that the charges be dropped. On February 12th, McAfee said he would consider removing Willis from the case if he finds a financial conflict of interest. McAfee clarified that none of Roman's complaints are relevant and that at a February 15th hearing, he would consider details of the Willis-Wade relationship only in the context of whether the relationship led to financial benefit. At the first day of the hearing, Roman's lawyers questioned whether the prosecutors had lied in their affidavit about when they began their romantic relationship. On February 27th, Nathan Wade's former law partner, Terrence Bradley, testified that he did not know when Wade and Willis' relationship began. Although Bradley had previously informed the defense team that the relationship began in late 2019, he testified that, "I speculated on some things." On March 4th, Schaefer's attorneys asked to subpoena Cindy Lee Yeager, a co-chief deputy district attorney for Cobb County, should McAfee reopen hearings. On March 15, Judge Scott McAfee ruled that either Willis, along with her office, or Wade must leave the case because the relationship brought about a significant appearance of impropriety. Willis committed a tremendous lapse in judgment, and her testimony during the evidentiary hearing was unprofessional, but simply making bad choices, even repeatedly, does not establish an actual conflict of interest under Georgia law, stated McAfee. As there was not enough evidence that Willis acquired a personal stake in the prosecution or that her financial arrangements had any impact on the case. An actual conflict of interest was not proven, ruled McAfee. Later that day, Wade resigned from the case. On March 20th, McAfee allowed Trump to seek an appeal of his ruling at the Georgia Court of Appeals. Trump is asking for Fani Willis to be removed from the case as well. McAfee clarified that this appeal would not delay the many other unrelated pending pretrial motions he was addressing. On March 29th, Trump submitted the appeal. On March 13th, Judge McAfee dismissed 6 charges, including 3 against Trump. McAfee noted that the deficiency was easily remedied, but since Georgia's standards for indictments are stricter than federal standards, the charges could not be clarified during a court proceeding, but would need a new grand jury indictment. The order leaves intact other charges. Scott Hall, Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chisbo, and Jenna Ellis pleaded guilty to 5 misdemeanors, 6 misdemeanors, 1 felony, and 1 felony respectively, and plea deals. At least 6 other defendants were given similar deals and rejected them. Eastman, Trump, Giuliani, and Melvez were not given deals, with the latter 3 not intended to receive one. Missy Hampton's attorney leaked interviews of the 4 guilty pleaders to the media, which reports were released to the general public. In response, Fani Willis requested a protective order for discovery materials on an emergency basis, stating the leaks were to intimidate witnesses. Judge McAfee accepted this request, initiating the order on November 16th. On August 16, 2023, Willis' motion for all defendants to be tried together beginning March 4, 2024. Chisbo and Powell had been scheduled to be tried on October 23rd, and Judge McAfee had ordered that hundreds of potential jurors should appear beginning on October 20th, but both defendants pleaded guilty shortly before jury selection began. Hall, Powell, Chisbo, and Ellis would not be tried because they had pleaded guilty. As of April 2024, trial dates for the 15 remaining defendants have not been set. In November 2023, Willis proposed starting the trial on August 5th, 2024, expecting that it might continue into early 2025. She anticipated that defendant Trump's other criminal trials might delay this case, but acknowledged that other defendants have a right to a speedy trial. In January 2024, the court Powell's deadlines were shortened still because he was serving in the Georgia General Assembly. His deadline for the pretrial filings was moved to mid-April. And On July 1st, 2024, the Supreme Court ruled that for acts considered official, former presidents are immune from criminal prosecution. Further evidence that these official acts cannot be used to prosecute them for other acts. This will affect the Georgia prosecution in various ways. For example, Trump's interviews with Justice Department's attorneys can no longer be introduced as evidence at the Georgia trial. On August 16, 2023, Woodard's motion for all defendants to be tried together began March 4, 2024. Unlike the proceedings in Trump's other 3 indictments where photography is not permitted, the Georgia proceedings will be live-streamed on YouTube and journalists will be allowed to use their phone to the courtroom. However, the juries will remain anonymous at least until the end of the trial and will have security. During Chesbro and Powell's trial preparation, prosecutors had filed to seek testimony from Boris Epshteyn, Lynn Wood, several GOP officials in other states, conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, whose attorney said he would plead the Fifth, and NRC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported in December 2023 that the prosecution's nearly 200-person witness list included former Vice President Mike Pence, former Attorney General Bill Barr, former Acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen, and his deputy Richard Donahue, Congressman Scott Perry, and former Trump advisor Steve Bannon. House Republicans opened an investigation into Willis hours before Trump surrendered for arrest. Congressman Jen Jordan wrote her asking if she had coordinated with Smith Special Counsel Division or used federal money in her investigation. Jordan demanded Willis provide documents and communications by September 7th. Willis wrote to Jordan on September 7th that his letter contained inaccurate information and misleading statements alleging he was seeking to obstruct the Georgia criminal proceeding and to advance outrageous misrepresentation without constitutional authority for his personal political gain. Some Georgia Republican legislators proposed convening a special legislative session to consider impeaching Willis. Brian Kemp said he opposed it to prevent political theater that only inflames their emotions at the moment, and some grifters scam to raise campaign contributions for more. In May 2023, Georgia Republicans enacted a law that created a commission empowered to discipline or remove state prosecutors who were alleged to have violated their duties. Days after the Willis indictments, State Senators Chad Dixon announced he would file a complaint against Willis when the commission commenced in October. Hours after the commission became effective on October 1st, 8 Republican Georgia senators filed a complaint seeking to have Willis sanctioned for her alleged improperly cherry-picked cases to further her personal political agenda. On September 14, 2023, one of the defendants, Jenna Ellis, said she would not support Trump for office again because he does not accept responsibility for his wrongdoings. On September 15, 2023, a 3-judge panel ruled that charges against Sean Still would not automatically deprive him of his state Senate seat. That is the post-indictment releasing. Now, conclusion and final statements. The main evidence will likely be the testimony of unindicted co-conspirators, the 4 co-conspirators that plead guilty, the testimony of former Trump administration officials along with audio and video recordings. Conservatives' main arguments against the indictment are less than those of the Stormy Daniels one, but also less standing. Conservatives' main claim is that Fani Willis is politically persecuting Trump with no legal basis and using illegal means to do so. This now is especially stated after the Nathan Wade fiasco. Conservatives' strongest evidence for this is Fani Willis and Nathan Wade's relationship. This, however, was its whole trial in court, which you've already seen. But to sum it up, Judge McAfee found that there wasn't a conflict of interest, but still required either Willis or Wade to leave the case, of which Wade did. So conservatives' biggest evidence is now disproved in court. Though when did conservatives care about court rulings after 2016? Conservatives' other, but essentially non-existent, evidence is just random conspiracy stuff. You know, a bit of George Soros here, a bit of Biden there, and maybe, if we're lucky, a bit of racism to combine it all. But no, the rest of the so-called evidence is flagrant at best. Conservatives' other claim is Trump's freedom of speech is being violated. This, however, too holds little water. Main evidence here is all the tweets from Trump's account within the acts for the first count. Conservatives claim this proves Trump's freedom of speech is 1, being violated, and 2, being the reason he's charged. Neither are true, as per the first Judge McAfee ruled multiple times for not just Trump that freedom of speech doesn't cover what was said or done. And as per the second, this is just wrong at best and a lie at worst. The tweets or statements aren't the reason for the charges. They are merely used as a piece of evidence along with over 100 actions to point towards the fact that the Trump team was an organization with a clear plan being acted upon. As of now, the RICO case will be postponed until December for all arguments, but could take until 2025 to get the actual jury selected and trial started. Until then, this has been sufficient.